And yesterday, and Saturday.
Sure.
Mary Ann, are we live?
Hey, Jeremy. That email you sent that had like a schedule on it? Yes. Can you resend that real quick? I can't find it.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. It is January 31st, and this is a special meeting of the Village of Tequesta Council. And unlike the last meeting, I'm actually going to ask for the roll call. Last time I was trying to get it really expedited quickly. So, Mary Ann, can you call the roll, please?
Mayor Diallo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Brandon.
Here.
Councilmember Prince.
Here.
Councilmember Young.
Here.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Do we have anyone from the audience that would like to offer any comments? Mary Ann, did you get any cards?
Don't for this meeting, no.
Okay, all right. So the first item on the agenda is an agreement with ChargePoint for charging stations to be located at the Recreation Center. Mr. Allen?
So the first item is consider agreements from ChargePoint, Village of Tequesta providing charging stations. Staff is recommending agreement between ChargePoint and the Village of Tequesta. We started this process, back in the spring of trying to locate a vendor for the charging stations. It is part of our site plan approval. We do have 4 stations planned. We have spent the money in the process to build the rec center, and we've already got the electrical and all the sites ready for the charging stations. And so this is to provide a vendor that will provide these stations. There's a couple different, contracts or agreements. This one seemed the most favorable. It's $2,040 a year for each station, and then there's 2 plugs for each station. It is a 5-year agreement. When we do this, they will maintenance, they will install them, provide service for us. They provide, let's say, a cloud station to allow us to set the rates and, view reports, view usage. We do receive 90% of the revenue, so if we said, $1 an hour charge, we'll get 90 cents out of that. They collect all the revenue and submit us a check based on the usage. We are able to set that rate at whatever we deem appropriate to recoup our cost on this. Typically, what ChargePoint is telling me is 10 to 30 cents per hour to cover utility cost. An average cost that is throughout the industry is somewhere between 70 cents to $1.25 per hour, and that helps recoup some of our administrative costs. The stations will use a cell phone service to communicate. That's included in this fee. The agreement has been reviewed by legal, determined to be legally sufficient. Troy Meserol from ChargePoint is on Zoom, can answer any questions, and of course I can answer any questions on this as well.
Okay, comments from the council?
I don't really have anything on.
Okay.
I might have missed it. Is this the fast charging ones or the ones that take a little longer?
A little longer. So he was telling me that they typically, for every hour, it's 15 minutes. So a typical charge is 8 hours. So this will get you, 15 minutes of driving time. He said it's not like a car where you wait until you get empty. That most of these electric vehicles, everywhere they go, they plug in. So it's not like when you're driving your car, you wait till it gets to empty. So there is a pretty good usage when people go, from what they're telling me.
I do have one question.
Yeah, real quick, let me just jump in, and I apologize. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yep.
Yeah, so 1 hour will provide about 30 miles of charging, and Jeremy hit the nail right on the head. Most EV drivers will practice the top-off model, right? So instead of waiting till you get to empty, just kind of plug in where you can go. And I apologize for cutting you off. You can go ahead. I just want to clarify.
That's okay. You got a website that you can go to and find different charging stations all over the country. Will this one be listed on a on a website too, to where if I'm driving down the road and I'm out of juice, I can pull it up and that one's gonna pop up as a charging station? Or is it just solely for the use of over there?
Troy, do you have an answer on that?
Yep, they will appear on the ChargePoint map. The great thing about ChargePoint is we have about 73% of the market share currently, so most EV drivers will be very familiar with ChargePoint, and they will, if you so choose, they will be available on that map.
Okay.
Lori, did you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to clarify that, considering that they are at the park location. I might feel differently if it's at a different location.
Okay, Kyle?
So my concern is someone does go to the app and decides to go look, and it takes up a spot from someone that's going to use the rec center. And so that'd be my concern is there a way to mitigate the amount of time that someone can be on that charge while, during the day, let's say, or at night?
Yeah, so something that we kind of implement here at our office here out in Scottsdale, Arizona, is for the first 3 hours of charging, we're gonna charge you 80 cents per hour of charging. Thereafter, we're gonna charge you $5 per hour of charging, right? And you can set those numbers to whatever you feel comfortable setting them at. It's completely up to you, but that's what we have it set at, right? And you can set a grace period, right? So they'll be notified through the app on their phone, hey, you have 15 minutes to go move your car, or you're gonna be charged this fee, right? And that'll really incentivize people to be, in and out on their spot. You can do any variable time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever works best for you.
Okay. Anything else?
Is that the normal price, is 80 cents for the first 3 hours and $5 thereafter?
It typically varies, right? In Scottsdale, Arizona, parking isn't as much of a premium as in other places in the country, right? I know in other parts of the country they can charge a little bit more. Typically what, I've been driving an EV a little bit, typically what I see is $1.20 per hour, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Kyle, did you have anything else? Molly?
So Kyle's question kind of leads into mine, and I wasn't here for the history of why these were, decided to be put on the plan to begin with. But who are they intended for to use? Because I think about if it's just people from the village, like, you can't imagine they're going to pay to charge their car when they're just going to go, 5 minutes down the road to charge the car. Then we're going to have a problem with people coming from further away that are going to sit there and charge their car that aren't using the rec center park, and do we have issue with that? And then also, can golf carts use this too, or is it just cars?
Well, Troy, let me take the first one. So this originally started through the EAC. It is part of our comp plan, and now it's in our strategic plan to look into this. So our comp plan does call for sustainable, a sustainable product like this. And so this is us, staff, chasing that. Of course, EAC did push that through their committee or their advisory group, and actually passed it on to me to look at. And so that's where it started. Of course, then we included that part of the rec center site plan. And then Troy, I don't know if you have, with a place like this, what part, who are we drawing to? Are we drawing to the community? Are we drawing to out of towners? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think in a public, I'm guessing a public park in a rec center, right, or in the area. I think that's obviously one of the more ideal places for level 2 charging, right? Because I'm assuming people are going to spend between 1 and 2, maybe 3 hours there, right? And I don't know how much people are in and out there, but really the ideal people that you're targeting are those places, right, where people are going to spend more than an hour of time, right? So, and really when it comes back to who are you targeting as far as the target audience for the EV chargers, and that's really up to you at the end of the day, right? Because whether which way you look at it or not, right? EV charging is going to come, and it's getting more and more popular, right? Especially down in Florida. So if it's something that you would like to do and produce, right? But we do have statistics on how many trees you're planting and what you're doing for the environment, right? So that's good marketing material. But really, at the end of the day, is what it comes down to is do you want to put those as an amenity in your location, right? Do you want to service EVs as they become more and more popular? And I can tell you, as far as EV popularity goes, Florida is right up there at the top of the list. So I definitely think it does help draw people to those locations because they're going to pull up the map, see the charging station, right, and they're going to go there. I can tell you for sure, we've been able to drive an EV for a little bit here. ChargePoint's let us do that. And I can tell you if I saw a rec center with a charging station and I needed to charge, I would definitely go spend an hour or two there, right? Maybe play some basketball, work out a little bit, and then be about my way, right? So it's something along those lines, if that makes sense a little bit.
And then the only other thing I'll say with the comp plan, and I talked to Nilsa a little bit about this, she made a good point that I hadn't used as a selling point before, but it does provide, these charging stations as a green alternative, and it kind of serves as an example for developers and future development for them to put them in. So I thought that was a good point that Nilsa made as well.
Well, I think too, and I think we're all will agree on this, is that the demand's obviously going to go up. It's not going to get any less. I think there will be a time that when the majority of the cars will pull up in that parking lot, I'd say a good 30 or 40% of them will be electric vehicles. And I don't think we're too far away from that. So, I mean, there might be a possibility in 7 or 8 years that there might be a demand for having more of those there than what we're actually allotting for at the current time. Because it's obviously, I mean, you know the statistics better than I do. I mean, you probably got a good grip on what the demand's going to be moving forward in the next 5 years, 10 years, et cetera, based on the statistics and stuff.
Yeah, I can tell you in certain places in the country, they're requiring all new builds somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% of parking spots to be designated to EVs.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit high in comparison to some others. I would say 7 to 10% is a fair estimate going forward. Places like Florida have implemented a law like you can't refuse, this is for multifamily tenants, right? But it's just kind of the way things are going. You can't refuse charging for a tenant if that's what they want. So, things are kind of going that way, and I certainly agree with you. It doesn't hurt to have one of these at this point in time. Obviously, we're still very early in the market. We're still probably less than 6-7% market penetration with electric vehicles. But I don't know if you can definitely tell it's exponentially going up, and a lot of the manufacturers are saying, we'll see if it actually happens, right? But their plan is to hopefully by 2035 to stop having just gas vehicles, right? Just go all electric. So that's certainly the way we're headed, and we're still very early, right? But definitely headed in that direction.
My question wasn't answered about if golf carts can charge.
Yeah, and I was trying, and that's a good question. I've not been posed that with these ones. I would imagine that they can if they have the correct adapter, but I definitely took a note on that, and I can get back to you on that if these can charge those.
Okay, I guess I just want to make sure this isn't for optics. You know what I mean? Because I think it's a good gesture, but I mean, I know it's on the workshop agenda, but currently I think it's residents only for the rec center, so I just can't imagine people that live so close are going to pay for charging their vehicles. It's just my personal opinion.
Would it cost them 30 cents at the
I mean,
house?
yeah, exactly. So I just can't imagine people are going to be using the rec center are going to pay to charge their cars there. So the whole optics thing with, it's sustainable, it's in our comp plan, but is it really the right place? So that's kind of where I'm at. And again, I wasn't here for the whole history, but just someone like kind of fresh eyes on it, that's where I'm at.
I have
I'm
two
gonna-
questions.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You want to go?
Well, I'm going to pick up on both what the Vice Mayor said and Molly, what you said. Initially, when this first came forward, I was in favor of it. But I had a discussion with the manager, and I'm going to take a different tact because you just made a valid point, which is the people who are going to be parking in this parking lot, certainly for the first 6 months, but it really, as we move forward, even if we allow for non-resident membership to the rec center, all live very, very close by. I mean, I think the furthest distance from in Tequesta to the rec center coming off the island is a couple miles, and if you go to the furthest reaches of the country club, you're only talking about 2 miles. And am I going to pay, $1.20 an hour to charge my car when I can plug it in at home and I'm only a couple miles away, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and pay significantly less? Plus, it takes up, parking at this point in time for the rec center is going to be at a premium. So if we're designating 4 parking spaces for charge stations only, Now we've just taken 4 parking spaces out of use for non-electric vehicles. The other thing is, even at 90 cents an hour, and I'm assuming the cost is $2,000 per charge station, and each charge station can accommodate 2 cars,
You got different power too.
you're talking about, well, 90 cents that we're going to make above and beyond the utility. So now you're talking maybe $1.10, $1.20, but at 90 cents an hour, those 4 charge stations have to be used at least 4 hours a day just to recover our costs. So while I think the idea of a green initiative is a good thing, at this point, I am questioning the true usefulness and the true benefit and the true value of putting these stations at the rec center at this time. So while I did support it initially, at this point in time, I've changed my position on this, and I would not be in favor of moving forward with the charge stations at this point.
I appreciate what you're saying, but the reason why I'm in favor of it is for, part of the reason is because of what the demands are going to be moving forward. I mean, there's going to be more and more people driving electric vehicles.
And I agree with you, but again, if they're coming from our surrounding community, 99% of them, are you going to charge it at the rec center if you can plug it in at home for a quarter of the price?
Well, if I'm in a hurry and my car's low and I'm going to be up here, I got to run my kids up here to the rec center for an hour or two, you know, and if I got to run to the grocery store after that, I don't have time to go back home. It's going to be a convenience thing. It's not that someone's going to come up here and fully charge their vehicle. It's going to be purely for the convenience part of it. If you're running low on juice, you can run in there and grab you a little bit of juice and run home or another location after you leave the rec center. Because, you know, I mean, hell, I get low on gas and, you know, and I forget about it. So I'm running somewhere, then I got to stop and grab some gas somewhere and then go on about my business. But I think, you know, Frank, that it's, we really need to put these in because of the demand moving forward. It's going to be less expensive now to get them in than it will be 3 or 4 or 5 years. But we're going to have them at some point because of the demand that it's going to require, you know, because of the demand, not demand, but the number of electric vehicles going to be on the road. I mean, it's going to go up.
Yeah, no, I'm not disputing that. I guess I'm just questioning where you're going to charge your car, and for me, I just plug it in at night at home. I just wouldn't spend the extra money, 3 or 4 times the cost to plug it in at the rec center. I just don't think the utilization is going to be there at this point in time.
I agree.
And it's taking parking away from non-electric vehicles and that's parking we need. I mean, we were able to expand the number of parking spaces with a redesign of the parking lot, but parking's still very much at a premium, and I just don't want to take 4 spaces out of circulation for what I see as minimal usage, which I don't even believe in the early years would even cover our costs. This is something we could always come back to, you know, years from now if we find there is truly a demand. I just don't see it at this point.
I think the great news is the infrastructure's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the demand starts showing up that we need to do it, wouldn't be difficult to add it.
Well, I would certainly wire it for that.
I think it is wired. It's wired, ready to go.
Yeah.
And I think I'm thrilled by that, because I think at some point you are absolutely correct.
Mhm.
And when that time comes, who knows what's going to be in front of us at that time, and I would rather wait that 2-3 years.
So I have some clarifying questions. Do we know how many charging stations are in our village area? Not homes, but actual businesses. I know the gas stations don't have them.
I don't think there's any.
I don't know, unless an HOA or something has them. I'm unaware of any.
Okay. The wiring that would go in as infrastructure, would it support, let's say, the faster version of charging station? The one that charges in like 30 minutes?
Troy, does the infrastructure that type of charging station, would it accommodate a fast charging station?
It would need more. If you put in what we discussed, Jeremy, then it would need a little bit more power than what was supplied. Because the level 2s are only 40 amps per port, and the level 3s are much higher than that.
And then I guess the contract would change. We'd have to circle back to some pricing.
Yeah, this contract is substantially different.
I asked that because the EAC, when they discussed charging stations in different areas of the village, one was at Paradise Park, but they were concerned with if someone charged there, where are they going to go? I mean, there's not really a lot of businesses to walk to kill an hour. They looked at the 30-minute charge versus the longer charge. One's more expensive. Again, if you have people coming through the village and they need to charge to be able to get to their next destination, obviously a faster charge gets them in and out quicker. And they just kind of were stuck on what we're kind of talking about, the use and the demand. My other question is, what will we do about overnight parking and charging? How do you regulate that?
There's a couple of different ways to go about it. One, you can completely shut the station down, if you so choose so. Another thing you can do is you can put a real high fee on it, right? If somebody wants to plug in, feel free, you're gonna pay the premium. We're gonna collect that money. So there's a couple of ways to go about it. If you want to completely shut it down, you certainly can do so.
And does it have to be 4 spaces, or could it be 2? Or is it wired to support 4?
Whatever you decide. We have all kinds of different options. We've got stations with a single port, we've got stations with 2 ports, and that's what we've got. So 1 and 2 ports, so you can go in any number combination.
Okay, because I absolutely hear we have limited parking for our tax-paying residents. If this were to become a thing in the future, we needed to meet demand, I can almost see a higher, faster charge accommodating the coming and goings of people coming through the village. We can get them in and out faster rather than taking up a parking spot for an hour plus. If you're saying an hour is 30 miles and they need to get, let's say, back up to Stewart, I mean, that's a full hour, maybe 2 hours. I'm just trying to pre-think if we have to think about the wiring as well. Which way would be better? Getting people in and out faster?
Well, I think Kyle made a good point, which is the infrastructure will be there, and if we need to upgrade it to accommodate faster charges in the future, we can. But again, I think kind of taking a wait-and-see approach at this point, and keeping that parking open for our residents, because again, as Molly said, I just don't see the demand. People just aren't coming from afar. They're going to be coming from home, and it's so much cheaper to charge at home. I just don't see it getting utilized in a meaningful way at this point in time.
You know, and I don't know why I'm such an advocate of it, because I'm pro EV cars, and I'm pro this whole idea and the concept of it all. But you know, you brought up an interesting point earlier when you were talking about it, Jeremy, of the fact that, you know, because we're going to eventually it's going to be required for any kind of new construction and stuff all over the country that they're going to have a certain percentage of EV charging stations. It's coming, whether it's going to be a year from now or 2 years from now or 5 years from now, whatever coming. But when you go to build a new development, you're going to be required, based on the number of parking spaces that you have, to have a certain number of EV charging stations. It's coming. And so I think that eventually we won't have a choice. I think it'll be federally regulated, or somebody's going to regulate it. They might allow the states to individually, you know, make their own determination about what they feel like the demand is for certain states, because Idaho's not going to be using as many EV vehicles as we are here in Florida, so they may allow you to do it in individual states, but it is coming. And so it's inevitable that eventually we're going to have them. So either we push it back and we wait till the demand's there and we go in and do it, or we go ahead and do it now and be done with it. Cut it back to 2, wire it for 4, but I'm in favor of at least being able to go and charge 1 vehicle. Do we feel like that we've got adequate parking spaces for that size facility? I mean, obviously we probably do. Are we short on them or what?
Well, we're short. We granted a variance of 5 parking spaces at the rec center when we went through the site approval process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it just depends on what we got going on, you know, is going to depend on if the parking's adequate or not.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that with the shared agreement?
Well, there's no official shared agreement. There's the church has been very gracious to let us use their parking when they're not in service. And so they've been a great partner, but there's no official agreement. If they, you know, obviously if they ever, you know, changed hands or, you know, changed their approach at their church and decided not to let us park there, I mean, they can always enforce that. I mean, this leadership has been great and been great partners with us.
And we did add the parking along Dover Road, which feeds into the main park area, but again, the rec center is still, as the manager said, parking's going to be tight.
Well, I'd like to see us put in a couple of them, rather than 4. At least have it available to people.
Has there been any other location in the village looked at to
Sure.
put these?
So we are putting one at the water treatment plant. That'll just be for our services. We did look at charging stations here at Village Hall. The cost to install those were pretty significant. It was past the budget process, but we're talking, I forget what the quote was, but $25,000 to put, just to make it ready. Didn't think there was a need for it here at Village Hall. You'd probably get more employees parking in it than you would, the public. There's not a lot, we don't get a whole bunch of traffic from the public like we will at the park or the rec center. So we felt like the ideal location was this rec center, and it happened to be, something that we were planning anyway. So we
But
did
if
look
we
at,
had someone going from one municipality trying to get, let's say, to Stewart, and they needed to charge somewhere, they could pull into Village Hall and charge for
Yeah.
an hour.
right, but I didn't, at the time when I was doing the analysis, it didn't outweigh the cost of it, at that point. And I know that FP&L, they came out and looked at it for their pilot program. Both Paradise Park and the Village of Tequesta didn't warrant that. They did the analysis on, it wouldn't warrant the cost to install it. So, that helped me in that same process. They were willing to look at the rec center for a location.
Do we know if Jupiter has a lot of these?
I know they have 4 of them at their city hall building. Obviously, they have a lot more traffic there because the community center's there as well,
I'm
so.
just trying to be considerate, because once people hit the Village of Tequesta, then you hit all that state land that you have to get through till you get to the next town.
Yeah, but I don't know that's the village responsibility.
It's
to-
not, I'm just trying to
to
make
help people
sure
pass
that,
through.
'cause I like, that we are at least considering putting the infrastructure in,
What's
because it
the
will be
perc-
here.
What's the percentage of the actual charging system compared to the total cost? How much is involved for electrical and all that stuff? I mean, what's the actual system cost?
Troy, you probably have more information on that, like what is but we're only paying the service charge, so we're paying $2,000 a year. We
And
don't
that-
maintain it, they maintain it, they do all the maintenance, somebody runs into it, they have insurance. To me, it seemed like a win-win that we didn't
So we're
have
only
it.
paying $2,000?
Right, plus they get,
Per unit.
per,
That's it?
yeah.
Who pays for the power?
I'd give
For
some
what?
of my
Who pays
money
for the
that I
power?
got.
So we pay for the power, but that's what the 90% that we get as far as revenue will help offset that. And so we set the fee to basically recoup our costs on the utility. So, we're talking about 2,000. I think from, maybe to get us off High Center, maybe the compromise on this is that we look at 1 with 2 parking spaces instead of 4. And maybe that, at least starts the ball rolling. That's if that's what council
Right.
chooses, or, I don't
Let
know.
me kind of poll the council on this. Molly?
Can I ask one more
Oh,
question?
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry, Kyle.
Can we reduce the term of the lease from 5 years to 3?
It's a $20,000, I think, or whatever that works out to, $20,000 investment, $2,000 a year, but
Yeah, you can certainly do so. It would go from about $2,040 per year to about $2,240 per year. I'd have to get the exact amount, but it's a little bit more just per year than the 5 year.
Okay. Let me take a poll of the council. Molly, what's your position at this point?
Yeah, I think I'm just not in favor at this time, and I know it's just $2,000, but still taxpayer dollars, and I just don't see the demand. If there's data that there is a demand for it, I'd be more than happy to consider it.
so this is an action item too, so if we're gonna approve or deny the agreement, we can do that, or
Well, we can
make
take a
an
formal
adjustment
vote,
to the
but
agreement.
Kyle, what's your?
So I feel like that as municipalities, we have to kind of lead by example to a certain degree. So I agree that the numbers don't make sense, totally agree. And I would be in favor of reducing the term down to 3 years, going with 1 station that supports 2 spots. Just in case something else comes out in the future, it might be better, this stuff's changing very fast, I don't want to be locked into it. I'm okay paying that premium of an extra $200, $400, whatever that is a year, to get the ball rolling and get it going. I'm
I
happy
like
the
that
pressure's
idea.
there.
Okay.
I'm definitely in favor of it. I'm in favor also of reducing it, down to just 2 stalls and stuff. And you could even put a sign up in front of it, if this is not occupied by an EV, you can park in there, because I pulled up, many times, and the only parking spot that was available was an EV, and I didn't park in it. But, you just gotta park a little bit further away and walk a little bit further and stuff, but, You know, it has been a little inconvenience to me at times.
Well, you still have the infrastructure to have 2 units with 2 charging stations each in the future. Lori?
I was leaning towards cutting the 4 into half, cutting them down to 2.
Okay, well, and I've made my position clear. I agree with Molly on this, so if somebody would like to make a motion, and then we can take a vote.
I have one more question, and sorry not to drag this out. Are we gonna be policing and or towing cars that park there that aren't electric vehicles? Because there will be people that will park there, I'm sure, that don't have the appropriate car.
Yeah, unfortunately, as far as the station goes, we don't have any way to monitor it if they're not plugged into the station, right? But if they are plugged into the station and it is EV, then, we can certainly monitor from there. But if they're not plugged in, then you have to put some sort of tow policy in place.
Yeah, I'm sure it'd be very complaint-driven if somebody was parked there that shouldn't have been, that they come get staff, we can, ask them to move.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion on this item, please?
Cal, why don't you go, if you don't mind, why don't you go ahead? and-
So
I'm trying to think how I want to word it.
I'm gonna make the motion to reduce the term down to 3 years.
Subject to what, do you want to subject to finding out what the actual cost is?
Was it 2,450?
Well, he gave you a guesstimate, he didn't give you a hard number.
Yeah, I have to put a quote together to find out for sure, and we have to run it back through legal, but it's, hey, I'll let you there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be about $2,240 per year, but I would have to get you an official number for sure.
Okay, as long as it's below 2,300 a year, then 3-year term for one station that supports two spots.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. Okay, 3-2.
All right, Troy, I will, thank you for being here, Troy, and I will touch base with you in the morning. We'll try to get the rest of it worked out. I appreciate it.
Certainly, and thank you all for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for having us. Regardless, at least you've got the infrastructure there. I think that's a very big positive. So we appreciate it. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay, Troy, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to
And I would
the,
just like to add, maybe
Yes.
to make an ask to the administration, Jeremy, that any type of new infrastructure that the village does should be thinking about that infrastructure side of things.
They made
I
the same recommendation to the village moving forward if we do any
Whether
projects.
you do it or
to
not, at
include
least
that.
put the infrastructure in the parking lot.
okay. Item number 2 is Resolution 322 of the Village Council authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year capital improvement fund and capital fund budgets. Is you here?
Yep.
Oh, I can't see him, he's behind the podium.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor. This item essentially is seeking your authorization to transfer from the CIP fund, that's a capital improvement fund, and an amount in the total figure of $30,585, transferring that to the capital project fund, which houses the construction of the community center. And this is to cover costs for electrical work in connection with the new rec center.
Okay. Open to comments from council. Bruce, Lori,
Good right now.
Molly, Kyle?
I have none.
And I have none either, so can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0.
Hey, Hugh, we're gonna have you do all the topics, so we can do that.
We had to have one that was going to be quick anyways. All right. Okay, that concludes the special council meeting this evening. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Does anybody need a quick break? No, we're good? All right, we're going to move on to the regularly scheduled workshop now. And again, Mary Ann, can I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Diambro.
Here. Bruce Teller, you're here.
Vice Mayor Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Brandon.
Here.
Councilmember Bruce Prince.
Here.
Councilmember Young.
Aye, here.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion on the agenda, please?
Motion. Approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's approved 5-0. Okay, the first item up is the discussion of recreation center policies, procedures, and events. Mr. Corbett.
To see if there needs to be any adjustments to it or any suggestions. And in regards to events that are coming up with the grand opening and the soft opening and the hard opening. So with that, I guess we can start talking about it.
I can add a little context. I know I sent you guys the calendar. Greg and I have talked, so the calendar calls for us actually final completion March 30th. So they're proposing our staff get in there March 9th. We'll see if that holds, but March 30th is the completion date. So we're looking at an opening of April 8th, and that's very tentative. Don't quote us on that yet. For the grand opening, just to add a little bit of context for that.
Okay, Molly, I'm going to start with you this evening on this item.
I guess I'm not sure what I'm commenting on right now. I mean, there's no, what are we talking about first?
We can talk about anything under the auspices that you would like to. I know you brought up some questions on policy at the last meeting, so I didn't know if you had something further on any of the policy items.
I mean, my general thoughts still apply. You know, I think that we are not looking at the policy and what it's going to take to open this thing close enough. I think that Greg's staff might need some more support. I think we need to talk more about if non-residents should be included more. Everything I brought up last time still applies, and I'm sorry, there's no backup, no presentation, so I'm really sorry, don't really know where to start.
So maybe I can help. So why don't we talk about the soft opening residents only until to the remaining of the fiscal year. And we will also be open, the non-residents and the residents will be able to attend their classes and things, but as the building opens, we'd like to at least take the soft opening until the end of the fiscal year, and then start to implement the non-residents into, some type of membership program. Once we kind of have direction on that, then we can kind of plan accordingly and move forward from there. The hours of the operation and what I gave you, and we can talk about that if that's okay. As for extending hours outside, those hours that were presented to you last time, we'd have to expand on levels of staffing. Right now, I think, do we need another full-time person? No, we don't. Do we need help part-time? Yes, we do. And Jeremy and I spoke, maybe I'm going to steal his thunder right now, but he actually had a really good point, is that when we staff this building, it's not just staffing the rec center, we're staffing the recreation department. And the department goes beyond just what happens inside the building, it happens on outside the building. So typically we run anywhere from 18 to 22 events a year that need to be staffed by us three. So I thought that was a good way of looking at it, is that when we look at it, let's look at it as the recreation department, not just the rec center. Because right now, we've got one part-timer budgeted for 20 hours a week at $15 an hour to help cover the front desk.
So why don't we talk about the soft opening first? Greg's indicated a desire to keep it, aside from classes, where non-residents can sign up as well as residents, to keep it to residents only, which gives them a chance to, implement the new computer system, get their staffing situation addressed, gives them a chance to evaluate capacity utilization, all those various factors, before we consider opening it on a broader basis to non-residents. So, I defer, my sentiment is to defer to Greg on this. He's been doing this for 20 years. I think he's got a good handle on what his staff can cover. I think he's got a good handle on the amount of startup effort and time it's going to take with the new systems and everything. We've got 6,200 residents in this village that are going to need to be signed up and have entry credentials, et cetera. So, I mean, that's going to be a very significant undertaking, and I think having a soft opening where we've limited again to residents only until we get a good handle on the whole process, I think makes a lot of sense.
But you're saying you need part-time help for the soft opening as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And you have one person budgeted.
Yes.
But I think the other question that came up was expanding the hours. And I think to expand hours, I think Greg's indicated he's going to need additional staff. We do have money saved from the Paradise Park lease that we did not move forward on that's in the budget. One thought might be to take some of that money and allocate it to Parks and Recs to give them the ability to bring additional staff if it's the council's desire to expand the hours for the building. Just a suggestion. Kyle?
Yeah, so I'm gonna maybe go a couple different places. You just brought that up. It was just advised that we don't need a full-time spot, so, right? If we either we need it or we don't, and if we don't, then okay, let's move forward. If we do, ask for it. Sounds like we might be able to find a way to make that happen. So I'll just leave that out there. I'm not in favor of a soft opening with regards to allowing and disallowing people in the area to be able to participate. The soft opening, I would say, is something that you can do in the aspect of registering everybody that comes to the door. Maybe you don't register everybody that comes through the door for the first 6 months, but you do it, and you're going to build as you go, as you learn how that system. But, you know, when you get rushed in with a bunch of people, I don't know that that's the place to start registering everybody. But to figure out that process, and maybe that's the soft opening. To me, that seems like the biggest concern is that registration of getting people into the system, and I get that, I totally do. That's where I would say, hey, let's be more lenient on that process as we get people into the system. But I always have had the problem with people riding the same school bus, and yet they don't, one friend can go to the rec center and the other can't, just because they live across the street. I do believe rec centers and, you know, facilities should be used for the area and not just isolated for the municipality. I mean, I have yet participated in an event with my kids in the village of Tequesta at a rec department, right? It's always been in Jupiter, and I'm grateful for that. And I'd hate for there to be bad press, bad blood, bad anything, just because we might not be prepared for a grand opening. And I think we are.
Well, I think it's more than that. I think, you know, we're going to have JTA and groups like that might be using the center, and if they are, obviously, the non-residents who participate in those activities will be able to come and utilize it. But I think it really gets down to who's paying for this. We've talked about annexation. We've had efforts to annex, and we've had people turn us down. They don't want to pay the Tequesta taxes. We just spent $6+ million of our Tequesta taxpayer money to build this building. We are spending, you know, several $100,000 in parks and recreation to support all of our activities, and yet we have people who, because they live in our zip code, think they're entitled to utilize all the services without having to pay for it. So I understand what you're saying. I want to be a good neighbor, but a good neighbor also it's a two-way street. So, you know, I suggested this once before. I think we limit its use. We make sure we evaluate the capacity utilization. If this center is being fully utilized by those 6,200 residents and we don't have room for anybody else, I'm sorry, unless you're part of this village, you know, you're going to be on the outside looking in. I don't think any village resident should be displaced or have to fight to get in and utilize that center. And if we do decide to open it up, much like Palm Beach Gardens, I believe is done, then I think there needs to be a membership fee. We need to say, okay, we spent X number of dollars per household to build this center. We're spending X number of dollars to support our Parks and Recreation Department. If you want to be able to utilize this center, then there's a membership fee that's associated with that. And what I would say is if you're willing to pay that fee, then we will treat you as a resident for everything related to Parks and Recreation. So whether it's you know, an event at Constitution Park, an event in the rec center, you'll be able to participate in those things as if you were a resident. But this idea that our taxpayers are the ones who built and are supporting this, and then we should just throw it open to anybody, particularly again when we've had people who've turned down the village. Now, in talking with Maria, who's the former mayor of Palm Beach Gardens, she said they've very successfully used their parks and recreation in their buildings to leverage to get people to come into the community, particularly people who have children who want to be able to use all those resources. And, you know, we've talked about the challenges we've had with annexation, and we've talked about changing, how do we change that value equation? How do we create additional reason for people to want to come in? And I think this is one of the things we can utilize. So I'm not trying to create a bad image, I'm not trying to create bad publicity, but I feel very, very strongly that the residents paid for this, they're gonna pay to maintain it, they're gonna pay to utilize it. Other people who want to use it, if we ultimately are able to open it up, need to be contributing as well to the costs that are associated with this center.
Well, I agree with somewhat of what both of you guys have said. I don't think that it's, that we should penalize the children and stuff for not having the ability to be able to utilize the rec center, though, just because their parents don't want to annex into the city. I think we're mixing an entirely different political part of this into the rec center, and I don't think it's appropriate. You know, I don't think we should use that as any type of leverage to try to entice someone to be more appealing to the idea of annexing into the city, or the village rather, but I don't believe that we should penalize the children and stuff for not being able, but I do agree with if they aren't part of the city, of the 6,200 residents, that they would pay a fee of being able to utilize it so that they can come with their guys that live across the street from them or buddies or what have you. I think that that's a fair thing to do because they aren't part of the tax-paying residents and stuff that have helped pay for the rec center. So, but I do believe that they should have the privilege of being able to utilize it.
I think
It's a small community, guys. I mean, it's you know, we've got to let the kids play together.
So I actually have thought about this, and for this 6-month time period where we're not allowing non-residents, what we can do is, like in the software system, when your family goes in and they register and you put your entire family in the software, what we can do is if your family wants to add people to the list that you would like, you know, resident, non-resident, doesn't matter where you live, we can add you on the list of your family. So it's not totally eliminating, and when we're only talking about this like 6-month time period that we're doing this opening, you know, just for our residents so that we can get our feet wet and kind of see what's going to happen. But I think it has a happy medium here because we can allow these, because I know all you guys have friends that live outside the village. It would be very easy for you to go in and add them to your family. You know, so when we create your profile for you, then you can add your friends. Up to 2, 4, whatever. So I understand what you're saying about the whole non-resident thing, and most community centers and rec centers that you go to, you know, it's open for everybody. But what we're asking for is just at least a 6-month time period to get our feet wet. And allow some of these non-residents to come in and see how it works, because this is all brand new for all of us. You know, most of these facilities have been going on for years that do allow residents and non-residents. We're going from 7,800 to 15,000 square feet, brand new, and everybody wants a piece of it. I can tell you that right now. So it's going to be really busy. I'm just offering a suggestion. I don't know if does it make sense what I'm saying?
I don't know if I would, I mean, my first reaction to it would be, I like the idea of them registering and paying a fee, rather than someone adding someone on. That can get a little tricky when you start doing that, you know, and how many they're gonna do, and this, that, and the other, and do they have to come with that family in order to utilize it? And, I mean, there's a lot of, I think you're opening yourself up for a little bit more than what that scenario would be worth. But I do like the idea of having a non-resident card for access and in the use of it for a certain fee, and a nominal fee, something that it's going to be easy for all families to be able to afford.
Yeah, again, I hear what you're saying, and I hear what Kyle's saying, but again, the way I look at this is very straightforward. On average, each household unit in this village paid $4,000 to build this place. We spend X number of dollars each year, obviously, to maintain Parks and Rec. We've all talked about annexation. We've all talked about the fact that we've got pockets that utilize our roads, they get the benefit of our fire, they get the benefit of our police. They should be, and they'll even acknowledge the benefits from it, but then they'll say, but I don't want to pay for it. So here we have a situation where we have something that I think is a very valuable asset that we know a lot of people, as Greg said, a lot of people are lining up to use it. And we're going to say the same thing. Well, we've got this great asset, but, once again, we're going to allow you to come in and utilize it at no cost. So the residents are bearing all the costs, but you get to utilize it. So that's why I was saying, yeah, remember, if you're coming in to do a class, great. You can come in, you can pay a higher fee, which is the way we've always structured it, and you can participate in those classes. But keeping it to residents only, like I said, gives them a chance to get their feet underneath them and measure utilization, because like I said, if we get to the point where we get to October 1st, and this center is fully utilized, so the residents are coming in, and they're fully utilizing it, and we really don't have capacity for any more. I don't want residents fighting to be able to get in and use that facility that they just paid for and just built. If we have capacity, then I'm all in favor of allowing non-residents. But again, as a member, they have to have a membership, they have to pay a fee. The fee has to be fair and equitable relative to the residents and what they have paid to build and create this facility. So I'm not disagreeing with the idea of ultimately having non-residents if the capacity's there and if the cost of joining is appropriate. Lord?
Can you, without beating this horse to death, can we go over really quickly the usage of the new rec center? We have classes and programs. What is the open usage? So if someone was a member or a village resident and they aren't taking a class, what are they going to go use that building for?
3 things:
Okay,
open basketball, open pickleball, and the game room.
okay.
What's in the game room?
It's for the kids.
What?
It's pool table, foosball, air hockey.
Okay.
Miss Pac-Man. It also has a television in there that you can game on. So there's an area off to the side that has a gaming area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that adults would not take advantage of those 3 other items for free use, but if we're being realistic, it's probably going to be youth from like 18 and under to use those options. So I'm not saying don't allow adults, but I'm also not thinking we should be using children as leverage for annexing, because unfortunately children have been used as leverage for a lot of other things lately. And I really think we need to be proactive as a village and really think of our youth. They need a safe place to go. There's not a lot of places other than the Jupiter Community Center, which isn't really a skateboard or a bike right away. So when we talk about openings, I would be in favor of pretty much allowing children. So if I went as a resident with my children and we had 2 buddies with us and they ride the same bus together, I like that concept, I would be more than willing to pay $5 for the extra kid or 2 or whatever. And I have done that in other so-called memberships that my kids have held at other places where I paid for a membership for the year for them. If we bring a friend, we pay $5 for the friend. I'm not saying it has to be the number, but I think that'd be much more manageable if you're bringing guests with you. Again, I really don't want to limit children that are not technically living in a tax-paying village zone. I really don't think that's fair to our youth, because our youth need as much help as they can get this.
I've got
these
2
days.
questions, and I don't really care who answers it, but what is Jupiter doing with their rec center? And secondly, what was the total budget for the rec center? What was our total cost going to be?
Do you want to answer the first one, or do you? So go ahead.
Yeah, the town of Jupiter, Kathy, you might know it better than me. What's that? Well, we know that, but as for charging, residents and non-residents are allowed to use
There is
the
no charge.
facility. And there is a fee or is it free for open?
Yeah, for open play.
But everything else.
basketball or pickleball.
It's free. Yeah.
And then what's the budget for the total rec center? What's the total dollar amount gonna wind up being?
Well, the GMP was 5.9. I think we've had some change orders up, accounting for about 150,000. So we're gonna be a little over 6 million total, if you're talking about total capital costs.
Well, I was trying to do the math on Frank's $4,000 and I couldn't get the math to work,
Well, there's
so.
about 1,500 households in the village.
Okay, so I just do it at times 6,200, so I was thinking.
No, I did it by
Yeah.
household. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you break it down by resident, yeah, it's a different number.
Let me,
Yeah.
if I may, because I'm just listening, I've had conversations maybe to get us off of High Center or shoot it down, which will get us off High Center too. I mean, we can go back to the drawing board, and we can put together, a pricing fee that isn't giving it away, but we're charging, allow everybody, I know at my other rec center that I worked at, we had like $30 a month. And don't do the $5 a day, because that's just gonna be brutal on our staff to have to sit there and take everybody that comes in. They can do a monthly, or we will put together a 3-month deal where they can get an extra $10 off. If they do 3, or if they do a year, they get $20 off or something like that. I think, I understand, Frank's position, but it sounds like, a majority of them wants to do that. So we'll put together that, and then you guys can vote on it if that's what you guys choose, but, because otherwise, I think we have two differences of opinion. The other thing I wanted to address with Molly and make a suggestion is, I know that she brought up the hours of operations, a Sunday, and then I think Lori brought up the thing of, well, let's do Sunday and maybe take Monday off. I don't think that that's the approach, because we do have Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes. So we don't, we obviously can't shut down for that. But I think in talking with Greg, we originally had 10 to 6 on Saturdays, but no Sundays, that maybe we can do like a 10 to 2, 10 to 3 on Saturday, and then do like a 1 to 6 on a Sunday. We have to be very careful with Sundays because of the church. We don't want to program in the morning for the church, because that's when their busiest time is. So I think if we do like a 1 to 5, that's the compromise. We kind of got 2 half days going versus 1 full day. And I think maybe, I know you had a thing, and maybe start with that, and then, see how it goes. If we're just getting, bombarded by reservations or people wanting to reserve on Sundays, maybe we look at hours later. But let's just see, let's get a feeler out there. So that's 2 half days. I think those were the 2 big topics that we're talking about, is the non-resident and then the hours of operation. Now, if we change the hours of operation, it sounds like there's a possible use of some of the Paradise Park funds. We can also bring that back to you as a budget adjustment for staff. And so we can bring that all back. I think the deadline for the next agenda is tomorrow. We'll see if we can tie all that together pretty quick, and that way you guys can vote on it. It sounds like, I know we've had a lot of conversations. I've had conversations individually with you guys, and if that appeases you guys, or it's a good compromise, we can do that.
Well, I think the idea here is to extend the hours, right? Not, so I wouldn't be in favor of shortening
We
Saturday.
are extending it. We're
No, no.
extending it on Sunday.
No, but I wouldn't be in favor of shortening Saturday. I think the idea of using some of the Paradise Park money to allow for additional staff in order to extend the hours and utilization, at least from my perspective, that would be preferred over shortening Saturday in order to have some hours on Sunday, but I don't know how everybody else feels.
So where I was going with that when I had the conversation with Jeremy is to not single out everybody on Sunday. Not everybody's at church, not everybody has a boat and they're on the water. So just let's be mindful that there are people who still work 9 to 5 week jobs, and maybe Sunday's their only day off. And I know several people who have that situation, and they might want to, again, and I don't know that, that's why we rely on you, Greg, to give us that feedback and what you're hearing. Do you feel like you'll have people? If we don't, it'd be new, because it hasn't been open on Sundays before. And going back to resident, non-resident, when the bulk, I think, of our adults will be using the programming, there's going to be a resident fee, non-resident fee. I mean, so for me, everyone's paying for the usage in that department. But again, I just want to reiterate, I am not going to use children as leverage to get annexing. I wanted to just quickly address the permitting alcohol that's on here. I say we just avoid that altogether and not do alcohol.
So just talk about that process, just to be clear, because Mr. Stone brought that up. So we went through legal. I know Greg did some additional research. We do have it in our code that allows for alcohol to be served by a licensed alcohol professional. They would have to go through the Department of Licensing, get that temporary permit, and then they would file a special event permit through the village, and of course, reserve the facility, and then we'd go through the approval process. If council wants to go that direction and allow for us to approve that through the special events permit, then we would also add a policy with an officer, and they have to have an officer here. But that's at the discretion of you guys. We haven't done any more legwork than that until we get direction from the council.
That was gonna be my next clarifying question is, so when the church or the school does have an event, they have pulled the liquor license for that event solely. So I didn't know if this was going where a special event would pull that, or if we were just allowing alcohol together in the
No.
property, which I don't support.
That is not
Especially
allowed
with,
by
again,
code.
children around.
I don't think it's allowed by Florida Department of Licensing or
Okay.
code. They would have to go through the special events process, and we would make it a requirement that they have to show us that permit from FDLP, or
That group.
Department of Licensing. And so they would have to do that, and of course, with that, there's, regulations, stipulations that, had to get signed off on, like being a licensed, alcohol provider. And so there are some checks and balances in place. If you guys want to do that, we'll do some additional policy that puts in place, and we can bring that to you guys back for approval as well. But we have not put together that policy yet until you guys give us direction if that's what you want to do. We were just tasked with looking into what the possibility is.
So on that basis, are you in favor or against?
Special permit.
Special permit events, and then that way it has to be obviously the type of event, and when, I know there's a lot of in-depth information that comes with, like, let's say the school, like, they have to give a lot of information if there's being liquor involved, I'm okay with that,
So you can support,
because it can always be not approved.
so you
if
can
there's
support it
issues.
the way Jeremy just outlined it.
Yes.
I would
But as
as
far as a
well.
generalness, like, I don't need people walking around our park with
How's
Yeah, I'd
beers
like
and stuff.
that to be presented.
Okay. We'll present it, and then you guys can vote on it from there as if needs to be tweaked or changed, or you don't like it at all. So we can put something together for you.
And then
My-
just one more thing, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna address, Greg kept mentioning staffing, and I know when we're talking about hours on Sundays and Saturdays, for me, it's not that I don't support being open more to get the full usage of the building, but the logistics just don't line up for me. I mean, we just don't have the manpower right now. So I was gonna ask you keep mentioning you're looking for part-time, how is that going? Do you have applicants?
We have applicants, however, it's not going great.
Okay. So we're still on the search,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, and I
So we
believe
aren't
that
there
we've
yet.
been- We've been on the street now for like over a month with the advertising, 2 months, so.
And that's fine, I just wanted to know where we were, because again, for me, when we talk about more hours, I'm gonna need the logistics there to be able to support it.
Well, one thing I'd suggest to the manager is perhaps a shift differential, so that if people are working during the week, we pay them a certain amount, but if they work nights or weekends, we would pay them more. So I think we're advertising at 15 an hour, correct? So Jeremy and I talked about it, and I said, what about the idea of paying $20 an hour for people that are willing to work in the evenings or on the weekends to compensate them for, what would normally be not as an attractive work period. So, I don't know how you can factor that into, because what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we'd like to see expanded hours. I think the issue is come back to us with, Kyle made the statement, if you needed full-time versus part-time, but come back to us with what it's going to cost us to actually make those expanded hours a reality.
Well, let's just at least give us a guidelines of what you want for hours. I mean, we talked about, a 10 to 3 on Saturday with a 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 on Sunday. But then I hear that we want all day on Saturday and half the day on Sunday. So in order for us to provide what the staffing's gonna be, we need to know what you guys want us to bring back for hours, or at least get close, and then you guys can adjust it, but just some
I
feedback.
might be the only one, but I'd recommend a full Saturday and half Sunday.
Okay,
I would say the same.
I agree.
okay.
And just when it comes to the non-residents, I align with what Kyle and Lori and Bruce have said. and just comment on Lori's with letting the children in. I do think with the younger families, lots of times the mom or dad are along with the play date of the other child, so then you do have an adult that you probably want to let in because the children are smaller, and so there's, you know, the adults are there for the play date. So I think you'd have to let adults in too, not just children that are non-residents, so just keep that in mind. And then I just really want you to take a good look at the staffing, because I just don't want to not be ready for the opening, and I know it comes down to money too, and it's hard in all sectors to find good help right now, so you're having that challenge too. But, you know, I wonder if it makes more sense to make sure we're staffed and then pare down the road once everything's streamlined, then really struggling, then knowing we have to find more people, you know, kind of like do it the other way around. I think it's easier to pare down and just open really, and have a really solid opening
If they're parking.
versus the other way around, yeah. And I do think there's companies, this might be more private sector stuff, but there are companies that assist with like openings and programming and getting operations going, so that might be an avenue to look into as well.
How are y'all advertising, where are you advertising that for the help?
It's through on the village's Facebook page, on the website, and through Indeed.
Yeah, indeed.
Yes.
Have, the existing employees and stuff, is there a way to ask them if they want to work, you know, part-time? Some of them might want some extra money and work the weekend some? I mean, it wouldn't be overtime for
You're
them.
talking about non-park and rec employees that are
Yeah.
employed by the village.
Exactly. You know, because most of them are working 40 hours a week.
Can be done. You can't double dip. You can't have a salaried employee then making part-time. So, I mean, I'll confirm that, but in my past experience, couldn't be done. I've
Yeah.
worked in rec a lot. We've went through that and never could be done. So
Yeah.
I'll double check it, but I'm pretty sure it can be done.
Now, part-time necessarily get benefits and everything that the full-time.
Yeah.
No, Wendy's probably the only one that actually, where they take it to a permanent part-time where she receives just one benefit, and that's a sick and vacation at a reduced rate.
Sure. But the
And-
average,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but she doesn't receive any of the other, so yeah, part-timers don't get any benefits.
so when we throw out the idea of it's possible, Greg might have to go to the route of increasing the $15 an hour. I mean, for me, that's kind of a balancing scale, because that person also isn't gonna be getting benefits and everything else we pay for everyone else. So I think when we get to that point, for me, that's not that big of a decision, because we're not putting as much into it as our full-time employees.
We're competing against fast food restaurants that are making more
Sure.
money per
And
hour now.
I'm very aware of that.
So it's.
I mean, McDonald's literally is paying $14 an hour,
Yeah.
or by Jupiter Bridge.
Rather work at the rec center, though.
What are your full-time employees making an hour now, on an average? I mean, not an average, what's your low and then what's your high?
Well, it's just Kathy and I, and now Tessa.
That's it, huh?
So she's split between two things, but anyway, I don't know off the top of my head what they make per hour.
I think my point to that is, I think we all can agree, we definitely want a quality person. Again, not just at the building, but someone that's involved in our events and mingling with our residents and our youth, and making sure they're stepping up to the job and not just showing up for clocking a clock. And,
It's tough for $15 an hour.
well, that's what I'm saying, I think that's for that conversation, but I just wanted to point out, because I think it's easy to forget that sometimes part-timers, you think, oh, we're paying everything else behind the scenes, but we're not. We're just paying them to come and do a great job and then go home.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk Saturdays and Sundays, remember, if we have part-time workers there, we have to have more than one there. There's got to be two there all day.
I would
Because
like
they
to
need breaks, and, you know, if somebody has to go to the bathroom, what do they do?
Sure.
Or, you know, somebody has to go back and set up a room, or, you know, they get called to do something, and then, you know, we're in a pretty high secure building now, too.
Yep.
So you can't go past that front desk without somebody physically being there the entire time that we're open.
I think we've made it pretty clear how we want it staffed, and I think you guys can figure that out, so.
Yep.
Yep.
And figure out the hourly rate, whatever's most appropriate, make it happen.
Did you have dates for the schedule and timeline of ribbon cutting and opening, the actual openings?
My birthday.
Is it?
Close enough.
Well,
We
yeah,
had
I
a
think-
birthday last time, we
I
did the
think
church
Jeremy
breaking.
already, I think you already mentioned it.
So really, I would say rough, but pretty rough permanent. Well, I think we're pretty solid on it with all the confirmations we've got from Hedrick. April 8th, which is a Friday, we're gonna do a VIP opening, all of our elected officials, Hedrick, REG, Palm Beach County, other, not necessarily public, although public shows up, that's okay. Not gonna promote that. And then on the Saturday, that April 9th, we'll do the full public opening with, kids and some kids' activities going on and, make it a very fun atmosphere while the 8th will be more of a formal atmosphere with the big scissors and, I would say champagne, but it's a Friday at 10 o'clock, so I doubt that we'll do any of that, but it'll be more of a formal, celebration.
You said April 8th?
April 8th, it's a
So
Friday.
then April 9th would be welcoming, let's say, some youth in to
I
come.
won't even get to go.
You can come.
You can still come.
Wholly invited.
We'll let you hold
You can hold the scissors.
a scissor or something. You can hold the ribbon.
So basically, April 8th is the PR moment.
Right.
On April 9th, and this is my request to you, Greg, since we'll be having the public, especially our youth, to come check out the building, I'm sure you guys have some great activities going on. If we can make that entrance for them fun. Because it's fun if you go to ribbon cutting and it's everything going on and there's stuff and big things. If we can make sure that there's a good pop for our youth.
Sure.
Because it's more for them anyways.
Sure.
I mean, we don't really need the PR.
So I know that it's a tentative date, so we're not gonna promote that.
That is correct.
No, but just
And
overall.
I'll be flexible if things do change.
Give us a couple of weeks where one of the big items that, I think we're nervous about is just the furniture part. We're supposed to be getting that. We got confirmation that we're supposed to get that in the middle of February, which should be no problem. And then, so that's part of we just want to, that kind of scares us a little bit. I think there's going to be some electronics that will not be a part of the building when we open because it's back ordered. We're talking like maybe May, but that won't be an issue. For anything that we do, we're going to make it work. We have some workarounds. So everything else we've been told is on track, and the 9th, when our staff get in there, and then the 30th, final completion, everything's else is supposed to be on track. But I think the furniture is a part that Greg and I were talking about, scares us a little bit until we get final confirmation. Then we'll make it official and put it out.
Let me throw out one more idea for the non-resident idea. I know you're talking about putting together a fee schedule. I feel like we should entice people by letting them come for that first 6 months and then start the fee schedule at the beginning of the first fiscal year.
So reverse it.
Yep. I just think that's probably the way to go. Get people to maybe want to participate, let them know that here's what it looks like, and then let them know that this fee schedule will start. That gives you time to start that process of figuring out how it all works, get them all registered. To me, I think that's the soft opening.
Okay.
Can we,
No, I would
can
say
we
that-
reserve the right to vet that and to come back to you with a
Absolutely.
Yeah,
recommendation?
absolutely.
And then, I'm not saying no, but let me talk with Greg and let's just see if we can make that work.
Yeah, with the dates of the opening too, a lot, other than the furniture, is gonna have to do with, like what Molly's saying, we've got to hire staff, because when we open the door and we're not prepared.
Well, let me ask you this, why couldn't
need
we
to
send
be
out a
prepared.
registration form with a water bill or something to the residents? You go ahead and start sending out a
We are, Bruce.
They're gonna
Yeah, we
do
are.
that.
We're gonna start, probably in the next couple weeks, where we're gonna start encouraging residents to go in and start registering through rec desk.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, so you'll be able to go in the next, once we make it live, you'll be able to, it'll be open, so you'll have a link that will take you to rec desk where you can start your
They can get online and do
registration
it.
process, yes. Yeah.
Is it possible to have the link for the water in the rec on the same site?
No, they're two different
We
companies.
could put it up there too, get a little sign up out there, throw
Yeah,
it,
we'll do that too, absolutely.
put a
Yeah.
pre-registration and stuff, and go ahead and try to get as much of that done, so you're not, bombarded by it all,
Right.
but.
But
All right,
one of
are you guys-
one of the other things with there's furniture, there's staffing, and then there's our instructors, and we gotta make sure our instructors are ready to go too. That they're ready to kick off and start teaching classes. So, Jeremy and I will, I'll get confirmation from all the instructors, and, we'll work on the staffing, and, we can.
And
I got one more idea, and then I'm gonna shut up. We have a lot of people here that are retired in the city that don't have anything to do. So why don't we ask for some volunteers to come down and work, some on the weekends and stuff. We've got some very qualified people here that we just want to probably get out of the house a little bit, and then that would alleviate some of the cost. I know you're shaking your head, but we've got volunteers all over the hospitals and, in different places where it requires a lot of professionalism and things like that. Somebody that wants to come in there and, on a Saturday or something and work the front desk for 6 or 7 hours or something like that.
Yeah, it is a possibility. It really is. We can utilize them, but their capacity is very limited. And they need to be supervised just like staff does.
Sure.
So, we can't just throw them, into the lion's den right away. So there is a training, process and that they have to go through. And, we don't want to leave a volunteer obviously sitting at the front desk by themselves, but, maybe we have the part-timers with a volunteer that once the volunteer gets comfortable, there's ways of doing it, but absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
I was just
yes.
throwing an idea out there,
Yeah.
trying to help you out a
No,
little bit.
Great idea, thank you.
Hell, I wouldn't mind volunteering a little bit. I'd come in there.
What day?
Wait, let-
It won't be Saturday and Sunday.
Oh,
That's
All right,
what
is
your
there-
volunteer says.
Is there anything else anything else you need from us this evening, or do you feel like you've got sufficient direction?
I don't think so.
I think we're good. We're gonna, Greg's gonna grimace, but we will try to get this on the agenda so we can move forward. We'll do some hustling tomorrow as much as we can get in front of you guys.
Okay, sounds good.
How's your Constitution sign coming along?
Good, good, yeah.
Okay, very good. Great, thank you. And the rest of the staff, thank you guys all for being here this evening. Okay, moving on to item number 2. This is
Comment.
oh,
Got some comments.
I'm sorry.
First comment is Pat Watkins.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor and Council, Pat Watkins, 167 River Drive. I had some initial comments, and I have to say that I feel like I'm sitting here in the twilight zone. You all know that Rec Department has made Tequesta kind of so valuable in what it is, and it's in large part why a lot of people have moved here to Tequesta. I personally feel like it's been unrealistic from the beginning to think when you're doubling the size of that building, its size, its functionality, its sophisticated technology now require personnel. These folks, you have a minimal crew that has been handling Parks and Rec for years and done an outstanding job. They know I always supported them 100%. But I think we're asking too much to think this same group is now going to take hold of this and do it successfully. And I hate to see the village cripple themselves by opening this beautiful facility unprepared. Honestly, I think this is something that should have been addressed months ago. You knew from the get-go the size of this building you were talking about. The programs that would go into it have to be more extended than the old ones, right? And now I'm sitting here listening to extended hours. Let's turn it into a party facility. We're going to have alcohol in there. I'm like, come on, guys, what's going on here? Just think of it from a practical standpoint. If one person has to be totally devoted to the front desk, which one do you want to pick? And what else is going to get to go on at the same time? With all due respect, Greg, I can't imagine that you do not need extra staff to operate this facility that's just going to be a signature part of this village, this facility and this park. And I just hope you'll really give consideration to that. I know budgeting, believe me, guys, I've been in your seats. But honestly, do not cripple this in any way and really take a hard look at this. I just can't understand how you think you're going to manage this. Greg's department can be managing this on the shoestring that they have. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Don't
You know,
disagree with anything you
that's a very
said.
valid point, and I'm so glad that you got up there and said that. I honestly didn't realize that we weren't, and it's my fault for not knowing. I should have known, I guess, that we didn't have ample enough staff, because I agree with you 100%. We've got to got to have more people in there to go in there and do it all. And if we got to pay them $20 an hour or whatever the case may be, but I'd be for putting a full-time person in there. Because what we don't want to do is to these guys, you want them to be excited about going over there and really enjoying it, the new facility. They finally got something that they can work in and be proud of. and they're so stressed out, and, they're not able to really enjoy their job and create additional issues and stuff for them and the recreational department. So, I'm very, very glad you brought it up. I think that we probably need to take another view at this thing and look at it from a different vantage point.
Well, I think that was the message, which is figure out what you need, figure out what it's going to cost, and come back to us with that so that we can give it due consideration, because I agree with everything you just said, Pat. Do we have somebody else?
Yes, we have Abby Brenner.
Mayor Abby?
I
Our
don't
first-
agree with a word she says.
We know better.
Obviously, I don't have to say it all over again, but she's right, and we have talked about it. We've been talking about it. I've been thinking about it and talking about it for years. It just didn't make sense. I mean, seriously, think. We double the size of a facility. We make it stellar. No more buckets under when it rains. No more buckets, right? You're not gonna have that. Hopefully. I mean,
That was a full-time job in
seriously.
itself.
I know. So seriously, and I'll say we, because I was on the council back then too. What are we thinking, believing that this could even be possible? Well, it goes back a long time, and I know it was well-intentioned because nobody wanted to say it's going to cost more money to operate if we do this. It was back in the are we going to do it? It won't cost more to operate it. That is not realistic at all. And I think that you really, and Jeremy too has to get on this. You've run these places before. Don't do it with just one extra person or two extra people. You have a vacation, you get sick. You want to go to the bathroom, but you're at the front desk and there aren't anybody to relieve you. It's just not enough. People, it takes some people to do it. I agree 100% with, we open this improperly. We open this on a shoestring, and it comes out that Tequesta, with this gorgeous facility, couldn't run their own facility. I mean, these guys are going to collapse very shortly. And I just think you really, maybe it's nice to think it's not going to cost more to operate. It is unrealistic. It makes no sense. And I'll go back to the question. I like your concept a lot, Bruce, on having other people be able to have a membership fee to come in. This is a public relations nightmare. How many kids have to play or pay, even a fee at all, to go to a Jupiter gym or to the Civic Center or anything? It's not, I think, not having other people, other children especially, being able to use it because they live literally across the street. I mean, we've heard this 100 times, so I don't have to beat this one to death, but it's true. And I don't think it's a good way to get annexation. I don't think that somebody's going to say, yep, I'm going to pay another $3,000 a year, or whatever, or for my kids because they're going to grow up anyway. I am passionate about this, and I'm going to do it for Greg because he's not doing it. I'm sorry, Greg. I apologize. He's not emphasizing how important this is, and Jeremy knows this too because he's run them. There's going to have to be some tough decisions, and it may be you have to figure out another pot of money, and it may not just be Paradise Park. But don't do this wrong. I mean, don't open this gorgeous, fabulous facility and not be truly, truly ready. And I know they're having a hard time staffing. $20 an hour makes a whole lot more sense if you're not going to McDonald's versus, coming here. It's important. We don't want to blow this. We don't want this to open and have any black eye whatsoever on the village of Tequesta. And I am very concerned that it's been optimistic, but I think that we have to help think how this is, because I think everybody's afraid to say it's going to cost some more money to operate. It's going to cost some more money to operate. Thank you.
What did you say?
You're welcome. It's going to cost more.
It's going to cost
Well,
more money to operate.
I know my four fellow council members pushed back on what I had to say, but picking up on what you just said, that is again a reason I believe that the soft opening with residents only for the first few months makes a lot of sense, because it allows them to control that environment. And as I've said, I'm in favor of non-residents ultimately for a membership fee. Now, whether that takes the form of a family fee or a fee, a monthly fee based on a child, whatever, that's fine. And I think those monies that would be generated then get focused solely on Parks and Rec. And when we talk about another pot of money, that, if we get sufficient membership fees coming in, that's a pot of money that we get to utilize to help support the center, which is why I said at the very beginning, our taxpayers have paid for this, and our taxpayers are paying for the recreation department, and that's why I think that's a burden that has to be shared by other people who may use it, who are not Tequesta taxpayers.
And I think you're right. I think the concept of having a fee base for families, and Lori, you said the same thing. You go somewhere with your family and it's not yours, you pay a fee.
Right.
And having it 2 months, 3 months, whatever it would be, I think that makes a lot of sense. But that is going to be down the road. That's not going to be the day you
Correct.
open up the facility. So I think
Well, it
we
was
just have
suggested
to.
possibly it would be, but again, I
Well,
think,
that
to
would
your
be
point
lovely.
about opening it and having it work effectively, again, I think that's where, Greg, you and your staff have to come back, regardless of what we said here, maybe you get pushback, but I think you got to say, what do we feel comfortable doing with that opening? Should it be residents only? Should we be allowing non-residents other than classes? You guys have the expertise, you know what your situation is. I don't want, to your point, Abby, I don't want us to set you guys up to fail. I want you guys to be set up to succeed. And so if you need to be strong in letting us know what that looks like, regardless of what you've heard tonight, and regardless whether you agree with me or my 4 fellow council members. Any other thoughts?
On Park and Rec?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. All right, we're moving on then. Okay,
we're done.
thank you all. Okay, item number 2 is the resolution with respect to establishing fire and rescue fees. Chief, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, Village Clerk, and our 2 former mayors as well. So what you have before you is Resolution 4521. It did establish the master fee schedule for Tequesta Fire Rescue. This was approved on September 9th of 2021. This is being published again for 2 reasons. One, on September 9th of 2021, Council did ask me to look into the waiving of emergency medical service transport fees for all full-time Tequesta employees, which we did write that language into this document, went through legal and went through the manager, and it is in the new document. The other thing, in looking at it, we found a minor typographical error. So I'm going to show you exactly where the error was. It's basically on page 3, section 1, fire and life safety protections. If you look at the fee description, the 3rd line down is review of plans, specifications not sealed by a licensed architect. It showed up as 0.52, or in other words, 52 cents. I don't know how it got changed, but it's always been 50%. It's been 50% for, well, since Jim Winan wrote it about 25 years ago. So that's not been changed. We just simply changed it back. And then, of course, the language that we changed is under Section 2, Emergency Medical Services Transport Fees. We were able to tuck it in under A. So there's a note there that says, as a benefit of employment with the Village of Tequesta, emergency medical service transport fees are waived for all full-time Village of Tequesta employees. Now, in considering this, that is exactly what I was asked to do, would be to consider this for full-time employees. However, as I review the record, in many cases, and we only have a couple that we have to write off every year, but in many cases, I'm talking about part-time employees. So I would happily rewrite this and run this back through legal if it's the council's pleasure to include all Tequesta employees under that waiver. And that's it. I'll take any questions.
Kyle, I'll start.
I'm okay with employees, I would say part-time employees, but I would not say council members.
Okay.
Why not full-time employees? Did I miss that?
No, he said
Yeah.
he's okay with part-time and full-time,
Oh,
just not
okay.
council members.
Okay, well, I'm fine with that.
Okay, that is in general, one of the things we have seen is it has been council members. Most of our employees, we only have a handful that live within the Village of Tequesta. We always have 5 council members that live within the Village of Tequesta, so in many cases, we are talking about council members. So, again, this is entirely your call. I'll write it however you like.
Well, I don't really get all the other benefits that full-time employees get, so I don't see why a council member be treated differently, or why they would be treated the same. We're pretty much not really employees already. We're elected officials. I'm fine with it, just being employees, part-time, full-time.
I would view you as an employee for the sake of this, but that's.
Does that mean
obviously,
I get to,
I
that
don't
means
have
under
the-
my purview
I
then?
don't have the legal.
I like it.
I would normally defer to Keith. I would defer to Keith on that, but
Other
we
way
don't
around.
see Keith. But my perspective would be that would be considered employees
How
of
do
the
other
village.
municipalities treat it? Chief?
Excuse me?
How do other municipalities treat it?
I'd say, I don't know off the top of my head would be the first thing I'd say. So that'd be something I'd have to look into. But, the little bit that I hear back and forth, I think some do both. I've heard them say, no, they charge everything, and I've heard others say, we don't charge employees, so.
Okay.
So is this when they're, on duty or off duty, or both?
This would be really at any time. I mean, if you're on duty and we're transporting you, it's in likely workers' comp anyway.
Well, that's what I was saying, so does it
So-
play more to off duty then? I guess
Most of
that's
the
what-
time, we're talking
That's what
off
I'm
duty.
saying, so then how many employees are village residents?
I'm gonna say it's less than
I
five.
think
So
it's
we're not even
4.
talking about
I
that
think we
many
got
people
4,
that
and
would
I
be-
only know, I think 2 of them are unincorporated to
Yeah,
Questa.
one just moved, or is moving, so, yeah. It's not many, and again, this gets back to, coming before you with the write-offs each year. There's a handful, there's 2 or 3 is what I've been seeing, on a yearly basis. So we're not talking about, this isn't gonna be hundreds of people. It's gonna be 2 or 3 people that we consider the write-offs for.
Well, I've had to use you a few times, and I'm still on board with not including council,
Not including council?
not including.
Okay.
And I've used their services
Okay.
a few times, and I still stand with that.
Bruce?
No,
No, meaning not including council.
I can't hear you, Frank.
Are you okay with this, with the exception that council would not be included?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely, 100%.
all right. So are we all in agreement on this then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm clear, full-time and part-time employees, but
Yeah.
not including
But not
council.
including council.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
Thank you for the
That's
offer.
it?
that's all I've got.
Now, this is a resolution. Do we don't usually act on resolutions from a voting perspective, do we, Jeremy?
Tonight, you won't have to go to workshop, but if we do need to approve,
So we want to approve this as a resolution so we can put it on the next agenda.
well, we'll put it on the next agenda, and then you approve the
Right,
resolution.
that's what I'm
So
saying.
it's a consensus to take it, so we
Yeah.
will take it to council and bring it back to you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Chief. All right, the next item was a discussion on the ordinance adoption process, and do we want to provide any type of a grace period as an automatic element, or do we want to leave that as a discretionary element on behalf of the council on a case-by-case basis? Jeremy, do you want to?
I think you've kind of covered, I think, what Molly was looking for is some kind of, and I'm just putting words in your mouth, but some kind of standard process that we have. I kind of outlined our process in the staff report, and so we're at the discretion. I think the council, each ordinance has the ability to extend. I think, there's some conversation about if you're going to have an automatic 30 days or 60 days, if it's a state statute that we're trying to get to match state, we'll be out of compliance for that 30 or 60 days. So I just, I think that's worth the conversation. I know with Keith, that was a conversation. If there's something that the state passes as of June 1st, and then as long as if we're out of compliance after that for, anything after, June 1st, if we put 60 more days on it, we're out of compliance with the state. So, the mandatory date on it may not make sense. It might be on an individual basis that you have to look at them, but we'll take council's direction, but I know talking to Keith, he's a little concerned about mandatory dates on that because of some of the state stuff that we may have to, meet.
Okay. Molly, I know this was a concern you raised, so I'm going to go to you first.
It's not so much a concern, I think it's just, I think we should be aligned on this, and if I'm the only one that's still barking up the tree about it, so be it. But I think with state ones, that's a different story, and I think you kind of wrote it like that. I mean, there's some that will just need to pass if they have to align with state, like, maybe we don't touch those, but if it's something that we're just doing on our own and it's not tied to state or anything, I just personally think that we shouldn't be randomly picking some we want to extend and some we don't. I think it's confusing to the public. I think it could get us in trouble. Like, you know, say we extend one and not another, and then, you know, someone gets a violation, they're like, well, you extended this one, why didn't you extend that one before enforcing it? I just feel like it can get us in trouble. I think it's smarter to just kind of have an aligned system and protocol, so we're not, you know, all over the place and confusing the public.
Okay, I've got a question for you, but I'll defer. Kyle?
I mean, I agree with Mo that we should be consistent with how we message changes within the municipality. I know that when we, you know, taking an ordinance into consideration, it comes twice in front. How we communicate that ordinance is through the emails, through the text message that, hey, this is coming up. I think that is good, but it's just hard. We're trying to communicate and continue to communicate so that people are aware of what's going on, and that's usually our biggest struggle up here is making sure that's happening, and that's the challenge. We're already doing a lot. How do we continue to improve on that area? And I think that's your goal.
Yeah.
And I think it's a valid goal. It's just, I think we do it in the front end as we are talking about it from the ordinance part. That, hey, we're gonna be talking about Airbnb homes and renting your homes in the next 2 council meetings. FYI, come, listen, watch. And I think that should be sufficient.
Yeah, so
After-
advertise more upfront, is what
Oh,
you're saying.
front end, yeah. Well, after the fact, you know, maybe we get, I don't want to say a policy, but something that says, hey, a new ordinance, we're going to post it 5 times. We're going to do whatever, and we're going to, whatever that looks like, that communication within reason. Just slow it down a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, that makes
Well,
sense.
That's kind of where I'm leaning, is more for the after as well, because we can pass things and then just hope that people are aware of them, especially if they are things that apply to residents. Builders, I mean, I'm assuming they are supposed to be following what they're supposed to be doing. That's part of their profession, but residents don't always necessarily do that. So if we pass like a fertilizer ordinance, that's on the village to really constantly push out, not just once, not just twice, but kind of sprinkle it out there. And then I do agree, it needs to be consistent, because I like consistency with all the things we do. So, I mean, we don't do that many
Businesses too,
ordinances.
So the businesses are affected by ordinance too.
They are.
So both,
Everybody-
right?
everybody's.
Yeah.
I mean, if we just find a consistency for the before, like Kyle was talking about, we do it X amount of times, advertising it before, and then we do a good, better follow-up too, to match it. So it's not just oh, we did it, and then we're done. See you later.
Bruce?
I think that.
Yeah, no, I agree with the consistency. I think, you know, oftentimes with the ordinances, not always, but oftentimes they'll come to us in a workshop first. And then they'll come to us for the first reading. And if we pass it, obviously, we've got at least a minimum of 30 days till the second reading. So do we, in the interest of consistency and realizing there could be some circumstances that are unique or might warrant some additional time, is the default that after the second reading, it goes into effect, but we want to do a better job of communicating through that process till we get to the second reading? Or are you advocating that, as a standard, we have so many days after the second ordinance, after the second reading and passage, before it takes effect? Which of the two are you advocating for?
I mean, this is a very open discussion to me. I think both ideas. I think that was a great idea that Kyle brought too. Like, what do we think would be a better path as a whole? And maybe we're not all going to agree. I'm really open to either of those. I think they're both, it's just something to be more consistent, because I've asked for a grace period on ordinances. Other people, other council members have as well. So we've all asked, not all of us, but some of us have asked for, oh, can we extend this one or give more time? So, you know, let's all just be aligned though, like, okay, we'll go this route. So then hopefully none of us ask for a grace period after something's passed, or we don't think the upfront advertising is going to work, so let's just do 30-day grace period for everyone after it's been passed, after the second reading, so.
But go ahead.
Jeremy, can you put together kind of like a promotion of how we will handle ordinances and resolutions?
Well, it's in your staff report, the process, how we do it now. So, you know, even, you know, now if we're gonna, after a workshop or even after a council meeting, we do an after action summary. You know, every one of our agendas go out to all the businesses. They're all included in iCompass. I mean, I think I hear you a little bit about, promoting what we're gonna talk about prior. I mean, I think maybe that's a step that we typically don't do, that maybe we can,
Right.
especially if maybe it's got through workshop and we know it's gonna end up on a council agenda, that we say, hey, this is now coming before council.
that's what I'm talking about.
So I think that part, I'm hearing you, I think we can probably do better on that part. But I think we do a pretty good job. I mean, there's mandatory public notices that we do. Obviously from our clerk's office, we summarize the after actions. I think we do a good job in the middle, for those that want to hear it.
Yep.
I mean, some people just don't follow that. And
And what I was going to also get to is if we're doing like 10 resolutions on a council meeting, and you're saying you're going to post it 5 times, well, that's 50 different posts. You're going to flood it to where no one reads it anymore too, so it's such a tough battle.
I guess the question is there really one optimal solution that's going to accommodate every circumstance? And I'm not sure there is. I mean, for example, you're talking about the communication. We send out the email on Fridays, right?
Yep.
To
Text,
the residents who have signed up.
Businesses.
We could, any significant resolutions or ordinances that might become forthcoming, maybe we could add that to.
Well, I think it's the ordinances, not necessarily the resolutions, 'cause
Yeah.
But even if a resolution is going to have some kind of an impact, if we thought it was significant enough, I'm just saying, you could add it.
determines that?
Well, who determines it in any circumstance?
Well, resolutions are typically your contractual stuff, or, it's not a law.
No, I know.
Resolutions aren't a law,
I
so, I
realize
mean,
that.
will it affect, those businesses? I mean, typically not. I think your ordinances are gonna be the ones that what I think Molly's concerned about. And I mean, I think, we can look at it from a staff standpoint, and any ordinance that doesn't, take a state statute into consideration, we can automatically put a 30-day effective date on it, for any of them that don't have that, and just make that our process in-house to recommend. Because now every ordinance that comes before you, we put effective date immediately pass of the second ordinance, and so we can take a 30-day stance. I still think, you'll have some people that follow and don't. And so when we talk about, the enforcement process, it's not like we go out and just write somebody a ticket and then they gotta go pay it. You typically have a notice of violation, depending on what the violation is. They have 48 hours or 72 hours to correct that notice. And so we're warning people anyways. I mean, it doesn't matter what that is. And, I think maybe to Molly's point, I'm not sure, but, when we go out, like the fertilizer ordinance, we go out and we're warning people, and we're not really enforcing it right away. Well, I think that's where she's talking about, like, giving them more notice before we really do start enforcing it, and making sure that our businesses know and have been educated. And
Yeah.
Please correct me, I don't want to.
No, that's how it started.
So
It
I
was
want
that
to,
exact
I want
ordinance,
to point
yeah.
out that it has gotten better, that we do after a meeting, we have the little cliff notes essentially. And I do agree with Kyle. I mean, no one's going to sit there and, unless they're super passionate about it, read through 50 posts of these lengthy ordinances that we have.
Exactly.
Is there not a way we can brainstorm and staff can put together a way, just like they do cliff notes for afterwards, and then the resident, if they get intrigued by that, they can look further on the link for really what it entailed? Can we not do that beforehand? Kind of, instead of writing out the agenda items so lengthy, kind of put keywords for residents to really quickly understand, oh, this relates to fire, this relates to that, this relates to businesses or homeowners. And then back end, maybe we just send in a practice of maybe not a time frame, but a warning level. Like, how many warnings do you give? I mean, how many warnings we can run around and give for fertilizer or ordinance? We can do that for 3 years?
I don't want to delay ordinances.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, you also have to think about,
Come back and bite you.
you also have to think about what kind of workload are you putting on staff? Okay, I mean, at a certain point, I agree with Kyle, at a certain point, you say, look, you got a first reading, it's out there on the agenda, so maybe we can do a better, maybe provide a little more upfront information, but it's gonna be at least 30 days until we get to a second reading. If you give them another 30 days before it's effective, if they haven't paid attention at the first point or the second point, what makes us think all of a sudden they're gonna get enlightened and they're gonna pay attention in the next 30-day cycle?
So maybe that's a
45
staffing
days, right?
decision in operations, is they choose you know, the route, just like an officer can choose whether to give a warning or a ticket. Maybe a staff member gets to choose.
Well, this is to Molly's point, though, is not cherry picking. Let's have a standard process that we do every time. You know, whether it's 30 days, you know, every time we come to you, and maybe there's one that's a huge issue that you guys all agree on, that 30 days isn't enough, that it needs to be 90 days or whatever that is, but let's not cherry pick unless it's just something that's just huge. I think that's Molly's point. She doesn't want to get in that game.
I don't
where we're-
disagree, Molly. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't really want to cherry pick, but there are some ordinance, like Kyle was saying, like they need to go in effect immediately.
Yeah. Well, the state statute stuff, I mean,
Yeah.
there'll be an effective date for those that the state preempts us, or we're trying to match state law. We'll come to you with an effective date of immediately upon passage, where the other ones where it's probably staff-driven or council-driven, that we're passing ordinance on those, will have an effective date of 30 days, you know, so if EAC wants to, you know, bring us another ordinance or something that we're gonna pass, you know, at that point, we'll bring, you know, a 30-day effective date to you guys after second reading. So there'll be almost 90 days of trying to get it out there. And I hear you, in the middle of all that, we'll be trying to really pump it out more, you know, and try to promote it more.
Well, if we did say a 30-day after the second reading, and someone brought up like adding it to the Friday newsletter.
Yeah, the
Like, could we
Friday.
do like, did you know that these 3 ordinances were passed,
Right.
links to ordinance? Because, I mean, that's a lot for someone, I mean, our agendas are really large, like, I'm sure a lot of people aren't about to pick it up and go through it and find the ordinance and figure out, and I like the council recap we do after our council meetings. I think it's great, but someone's gotta really be looking through that and, okay, what's this ordinance about? Let me go back to the council agenda. There's no links in it, right? So and maybe if the council recap could have like hyperlinks so people could easily pull up the ordinance, or do 30 days and then have on our Friday newsletter for that month, like every, you know, did you know these were passed? Be prepared, or whatever, you know, however you want to word it.
And to piggyback on that, rather than cherry picking which things we promote on the agenda, and plus I'm trying to think of not adding more workload to our clerks. If like the Friday text that goes out and it has a link to the agenda when it's released, if there's just caps, and then it'll say with it, see agenda item number, but it's all in the same link. So the person clicks on it, it goes to the one agenda, so they get to see the whole agenda, but it'll already give them a keynote, see agenda item 13 for whatever that keyword is, and then same thing down. So if we're talking about purchasing a fire truck, put the keyword for that, but then say see agenda item number 15, and put that same link. So not 100 links for our clerks to start putting together, but just it'll give them some guidance maybe.
I'm only concerned about ordinances, not resolutions.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just trying to think of easy
Well,
things.
let me work with the clerk's office. I hear you guys. I think the promotion of it, assuming doesn't meet, you know, it's not a state, we're not matching a state statute, we'll put a 30-day, the staff will recommend a 30-day, but leading up to it and in between, we're gonna try to promote those specific ordinances when applicable, when
I
it's.
think any emergency ordinance should be, obviously not, it's like state emergency should not be part of this.
Right, yeah,
obviously.
I mean, matching state statutes and emergency orders, well, even with emergency orders, we'd probably be pumping it out as much as we could
Yeah.
if we have those, but yeah, I hear you. There's gonna be a few exceptions in there, and we'll balance that and improve on it as we go.
Okay. All right, I think everybody's of accord, right? We're all comfortable with that? All right, very good. Okay, moving on. The last item is the discussion of the legislative session. I know we have been receiving information via Jeremy that has been provided by Jack Corey, and I know Keith provided a write-up for us as well. Jeremy, did you want to address any of the specific items on here, and then I'll open it up for council?
All right, just, you know, I throw a lot at you guys. I forward, you know, what we got. I mean, we've, I don't want to say always, but we take the stance typically of Florida League cities because they're trying to protect home rule. You know, we've provided quite a few that will have you know, some kind of impact on the village, you know, positive or negative, depends on where you stand. If there are others that the council wants us to at least track, or if you guys want us to take a stand, if you guys want us to take a stand different than Florida League of Cities, let us know. We obviously have our public affairs consultants in Tallahassee that could, talk to the bill sponsors, give the village a stance. We'd like to have a consensus from council on some of those, so, if 3 council members, all say no to this one, we can start that process, send a letter, get Jack to do that. So with that, if there's like I said, if there's one you guys want us tracking, or one of us, a different stance that you want us to take a harder stance, we can do that. Like to get all of council, given direction on those, instead of just, one that's important to Bruce may not be important to the rest of you guys, so.
And if we look at the summary that I think this was prepared by Keith, the first item was sovereign immunity, which was recommended opposed. Anybody disagree with that recommendation? Okay. The second item was the additional homestead property exemption for certain public employees, which included classroom teachers, law enforcement officers, correctional officers, firefighter, child welfare service provider, active duty member of the United States Armed Services. The joint resolution would allow an increase exemption up to $150,000, so it would go from 100 to 150. They're recommending we oppose that.
I actually support that.
I support that as well. Any other thoughts?
Especially the way the economy is going.
I support it. It's getting on up there though, 150,000, so that's a significant amount.
It is, but I think,
We
I
got that.
don't disagree, but I think given the class of people they're covering, and given what's transpired from housing prices and inflation and all the rest, I think that's a class that we do
We
want
just went through
Take care
giving the
of.
fire department a pretty big raise. I don't think those guys are on the courthouse anyway. I think that they're probably making as much money as some of these people around here that,
Aside from firefighters, I really just look at some of the other things that groups of people that
Police.
are like teachers.
I agree,
And
but
the social
it's
worker.
getting up there,
I know,
150
I
grand.
know.
I mean, that's
But so
pretty
is
big.
the market and cost of living. for-
Laura, you said you support,
for-
I support, pretty sure, quasi-supporting or not? I understand the number, but
I'll support it, but I mean, that's about as far as I'd go with it. I'm not
And I don't
gonna-
know, just to add, it says that it's approximately 20.8 million the first year. I don't know how or if the appraisal district can give Tequesta that estimate based on, the state obviously has some kind of estimate, but I don't know if we can, pick, if the appraisal district can say, oh, you got this many teachers, public safety that are gonna take that homestead exemption. So, I know Molly asked for like some of these at financial impact. I don't know that we can provide that, but you can still take that stance and, we'll live with the impact that comes from it.
It's a 50% increase.
I mean, philosophically, I support it regardless of the impact. I don't think the impact will be that significant for us, but.
Well, if we annexed all these other areas around town, we'd have that extra revenue.
Well, that's true.
No, I'm not gonna sugarcoat me. We have a lot of firefighters, we have a lot of teachers that live in Tequesta, but I also don't wanna see those groups of people have to leave the area as well. And it's not firefighters from Tequesta. I mean, we have representatives
have
from all
some.
over.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of teachers and we have a lot of them, and I just,
So did we have 3 on that one?
Yeah, it's a heavily funded lobbyist that is creating this, and it's cherry picking one group. I oppose it.
Okay, Molly?
Yeah, it's a hard one for me, because in theory, I feel like, it's people that should be supported, but it's really hard for me to make a decision on a whim without seeing what the financial impact would be.
Okay, so we have 3 saying we support it, so. I think, Jeremy, is your thought that we would do a resolution at the next council meeting?
Well, I would think for
If
the
we-
sake
if
of
we-
time, we could just, and I can share the
Just
letter
share
with
the
you. We'll
communication.
write a letter of support or opposition, share that with you guys, and then try to get it to Jack, now, and,
Okay.
try to let him run with it, so that way we're not waiting 2 more weeks with the session in March. We probably need to get
Okay.
going, as long as everybody's okay with it, or at least we have
Okay.
a majority.
All right,
I
so
mean,
on
if
this
that's
item-
okay with everybody's process, everybody's okay with that process, then we're.
Okay, so on this item, we're going to support vacation rentals. I only had one
And I
question.
just have one.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
We talked about this. I'm trying to understand, because there's several homestead exemption bills up. Same with, there was ad valorem taxes, there was several of those bills right now too, but only like one is on our list. Do you know why, or should we not be concerned with the others?
If you have the other ones, I
Oh,
didn't get a
it's on-
chance to look at it after our
It
conversation
was on
today for the
I
other
was just
ones.
looking at the entire list on Florida League of Cities website, so.
Okay, I'll look at that one and-
But, yeah, I'm just curious, like, why this one, and do the other ones not impact us at all, and,
I'm sure they all impact us somehow, some way, some more than others probably, but
this one obviously is getting the most attention.
The next one was vacation rentals. Jeremy, I thought on this one, the law already preempted most of our regulation, which was the reason we had considered the ordinance that Keith had drafted, a meeting or two ago.
so the difference is now they're talking about preempting the fees. If you guys remember the article that probably speared that coming back up to you guys, like North Palm charging $600 per vacation rentals, the state's trying to preempt that now. So unless you have a ordinance in place prior, and I think they have a date set on that.
June
then-
1st, 2011.
So you will not be able to set a fee anymore.
No, I did reach out to Jeremy. I try to keep tabs on that one because I would like to find ways to hold vacation rentals accountable. And I mean, I just want them to take it seriously. If they have to pay a fee to be a business, then more to them.
Okay, so do.
What did you say?
I would like to be able to charge vacation rental properties a fee for having, because essentially it's a business. And,
Yeah.
but the state is saying, or that's what the bill is. The bill is trying not to
Well,
let
Bill
us
would
do.
set limits.
Yeah, and so we have a time crunch because it says you can't do that after the bill takes place.
So, again,
And I agree with you.
I would
It is a
agree. I would
business.
oppose this. You're saying oppose, Laura, you're saying oppose.
Opposed.
Unanimous? Okay, so we're supportive of that one. Local government land development actions. I think this just puts more,
Bless you.
Bless you.
more regulations, more limitations on us. I would agree with their opposition.
So, Jeremy, we talked about this too. Like, this is the first time I've seen this one pop up in any of our lists. The list is different on the agenda, the list is different that you forward from Jack. So I'm kind of like, which ones do we really need to be focusing on? Like, is this even one of them? This is the first time this has been on any of our tracking lists that I've seen it. And
I think what happens is somebody can develop an initial bill, and then there can be amendments or modifications by other members, either within the House or the Senate.
right, I understand
Yeah,
that.
and so I think what we're seeing is, it looks like what Keith did is in some cases, he took those other elements and lumped them in under the one item. That's the way, that's kind of what I came away with.
No, so the local government land development actions, that hasn't been on any of our other lists. I don't want
Oh,
to waste
okay.
time going through a bunch of these if they're not of significant importance to us.
Okay.
And like I said, this is the first time I've even seen this one pop up, so I just kind of wanted a more refined list of what we should really be paying
Well,
attention
again,
to.
I think this one, again, limits our authority or our ability to take certain actions, so they're saying oppose, I'm in.
Which bill are you
inclined to
talking about? Can you give me the bill number?
This is 739-1248.
So I think that
739 in
one-
the House, 1248 in the Senate.
So I think that one, Florida League of Cities is opposing it. We'll keep with that stance. And I'll be honest, it doesn't look like it's moved anywhere, so I can't imagine if it hasn't been assigned to even a subcommittee at this point. And I'm not saying it won't grab some speed, but if it hasn't moved really yet, I can't imagine it going too far at this point. But especially since it's been assigned to 3 committees and it hasn't hit one of them yet.
Yeah. Well, it did say in the House, it did get assigned to one specific committee, but it's one of, as you said, Jeremy, it's one of 3. So they're opposing, I would be inclined to agree with that. Public records, I put some, again, obligations on us, Jeremy, you might want to speak to that directly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll obviously make it very, put pressure on us to get those records out or be able to respond. So it does create some issues for us.
Okay. So anyone disagree with the opposition on that item? Financial disclosure for local officers. The way I read this is they want each of us to disclose every element of our financial circumstances for public disclosure beyond, what we currently file as our financial disclosure form. And of course, Florida League of Cities is opposing.
I think we should make it as easy as possible.
So we're in agreement that we will support that position, okay? Municipal water and sewer utility rates, Jeremy, I don't know if you wanted to touch on this one?
So this one, I think it talks about they're trying to pass a bill that if you share water with another municipality, you can't charge more for water than you charge your own citizens. And so when I first saw this, I thought it was gonna be a problem for us, because we do provide water outside of the village. However, it's only municipalities, doesn't count unincorporated. And so we will still be able to charge our surcharge to the unincorporated Tequesta residents. Then the conversation came up with JIC. Well, we don't charge additional surcharge to JIC. They get the same rates that we get. So there is no financial impact if this passes at this point, unless, later on down the road, the village wanted to charge JIC. I mean, I don't think that's ever been a conversation because of the, partnership with fire and some of the other things we got going. And so, I don't see it being a financial impact. It doesn't, at this point, it doesn't affect us.
Okay, so they're recommending oppose. It's a non-event for us, so I guess
Yeah.
we'll just let that fly. Local government solid waste and recycling collection, again, the league is saying oppose. Jeremy, you got any thoughts on this one?
I don't really have any comments on this one. I haven't really tracked this one. I think maybe to Molly's point is there, some of these will pop up and, we haven't tracked it. It hasn't been an issue, in conversations with our managers or other cities, so I don't know how many have an issue with it and don't.
Okay. SB 620, 569, local government, that has to do with business damages against municipality. They're recommending we monitor at this point, so again, unless somebody's got a specific issue or concern there, I'd go along with that.
Well, this is the one that, right now, it seems to be flying through. So should we be prepared to oppose it? Do we want to oppose it? Even if it could get amended more, but from what I understand, it's getting through pretty easy.
So, and talking even with Keith today, this is gonna pass. This one and the 280, they're flying through. Florida League of Cities, originally came out and opposed these. I don't know that they've switched their stance on this one yet. I think why it says monitors, because they're trying to carve out part of it, knowing that it's probably gonna get through. They're trying to do what they can to at least carve out and make some exemptions or, make sure it's palatable. And so that's why I think Florida League of Cities is saying monitor, but from everything that's being indicated, it's probably gonna pass in some form. And we can try to, scream and try to, take our stance on it if that's what you guys want.
Well, I know there were some exemptions that were identified here. And was this bill the one that was the favorite of either the President of the Senate or the Speaker of the House? I can't recall.
I don't recall.
But does it really pay to even take a position on this if it's basically looks like it's a fait accompli?
Yeah, it hasn't passed yet. Anything you guys want to take a stance on, we can. I think just like Florida League of Cities, let's try to, if we're, we'll follow their lead, but hopefully they can carve out some, and we can provide some feedback to them as they ask for it. So Florida League of Cities sometimes will send out surveys to us on what we think of a bill, and so we can provide that feedback. And so if you guys are not in support of it, we will provide that accordingly.
Okay. What's everybody think? Bruce? Yea or nay? Or monitor? Monitor, oppose, or?
I'm undecided.
Okay, Lori?
Yeah, monitor it.
Molly?
What's the timing on, because I think whether we support or oppose something, I don't think we should never not send a letter what we think, just because we think it's gonna pass or not. So I think we should do what we wanna do, because I think it sends a message, and, our residents and businesses know we're, looking at this, following it, doing what we think is right for the community. So what's the timing on it? I mean, is this kind of,
Well, the legislative session ends at the end of February unless they
well,
extend.
it's March 11th, I thought.
Is it March 11th? I thought it
I
was
think it's
actually earlier,
March.
but-
I think
is
it's
it?
March, yeah.
Okay.
So do we want to continue monitoring? We still have like a chance to send out a letter if we want?
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I think we can still send out a letter.
Send an email.
If it's in
Yeah.
process, though, I think you, to your point, Molly, I think you want to communicate it sooner than
Sooner
later.
than later, right?
Yeah, so I would oppose this one.
Everything I've read about it's not good. So
So you're saying oppose. Kyle, what are
I
you saying?
think so, yeah.
You're talking about SB 620?
And, yeah, and
And
HB
HB all
the amendments to
569, and all the various amendments. I mean, the amendments have some favorable impact on the original proposal, but if we want to just oppose the original proposed ordinance and then, or statute, and then whatever they end up doing with it, they do with it, but.
I mean, I think too, I don't know if there's language in it for, if it's scaled for the size of the municipality, but, you know, a larger municipality could probably take a hit like this more so than a smaller municipality like us. So we should not be doing anything that causes our business damages at all whatsoever. However, like, can we absorb a claim like that as much as, you know, larger Palm Beach Gardens could, or, you know, I'm just saying, like, economies of scale there. I don't know if there's language in the ordinance that,
Limits the damage to the municipality.
yeah. You know, Jeremy?
There isn't that I know of. I don't
So
think
that,
there's
I mean,
any.
that's kind of where my head's at with this one. So, yeah, I mean, I think if there is no language for that, I more so think probably oppose.
That would be more of the stance, to see if we can cut out some language for smaller municipalities in some way, try to get creative.
Yeah.
This is a pretty broad.
It's very broad.
They all are, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
give me a
And then
break.
try to find the actual bill online. I don't know if I just don't know how to use a website, but I click like every hyperlink and I can't find it. So I don't know. Going off these broad descriptions.
It's being built.
And there's multiple
Yeah.
variations of each of those.
I'd oppose it.
I oppose. Molly, you're in opposition?
Yeah, or like what Jeremy said, maybe work on trying to get a carve out for lessening the impact depending on the size of the municipality.
Okay, let's do both. Let's oppose it, but the fallback position is municipalities under a certain size would be exempted.
Okay.
I can get behind that.
So people comfortable with that?
It'd be nice if it was just for counties only. Right? If the county passes a regulation or legislation, then that's, versus municipality, I feel like we know we're more in tune to what's really happening in our local area. I don't think it really impacts small municipalities. I think the intent is a good intent. I just think it's all encompassing and creating a major issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the intent is good, because we shouldn't be doing anything to
Right.
damage
Right.
businesses, but, you know, but I also think too, at the end of the day, it's
feel like-
hurting the taxpayers if municipalities have a lawsuit, like, the taxpayers are paying for all of that, so it's, I don't know, it's just,
My fear is that business is going to use this to their advantage.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to
Oh,
damage
it totally
businesses,
will.
but that doesn't mean we won't ever pass something that's in the community's best interest that could somehow adversely affect the business, or it's perceived that affects a business. And do we want to place business interests above the interests of the residents? So I think that's something that should be left to us to balance of our own accord, not have it forced upon us.
Yeah, we can lose our job quickly.
Okay. Next one, cybersecurity. This basically requires us to comply with, I guess, what I call best practices, National Institute of Standards. Conduct vulnerability testing with its IT and operational technology every 2 years. Require all localized employees to receive initial and periodic cybersecurity training. I mean, I know Brad has, Jeremy, you guys have been very serious about protecting us in this regard. I don't know if you have a strong feeling on this particular bill or not.
Well, I've talked, we do most of this anyways. I mean, we provide, this training. I'd hate for the state to, require anything of us, since we know our security better than anybody. Brad did do a survey. They asked us what our stance was on it. He filled it out. But my guess is that we're supportive of these things, that I don't know if we need them to, require some of these things. Especially, I mean, some of it might be unfunded mandates that they require of us, and then we're, going down that path.
So you would prefer to,
I think we just monitor, just keep monitoring,
Okay.
see how it fills out. It doesn't look like it's been referred to 3 committees and haven't moved yet, so I don't think that, it's worth
Well, they
the
did say,
ink to write anything for it at this point.
yeah, they did say it passed the second committee on 119. And it's now being heard by the State Administration and Technology Appropriations Subcommittee, which is the third of 4 committees.
Where's that at? Because the one I'm seeing is
Yeah, this is, I think
cybersecurity.
this is,
House
the-
bill.
this is the write-up that Keith did. This is the House bill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Senate, and what I understood from Jack is sometimes the Senate's process and procedures are a little different than the House, so sometimes things have to go through the House first in order for the Senate to take it up. And if it doesn't go through the House, the Senate
So
will
the Senate hasn't picked it up, the
put it
House
to the
has.
side. Yeah, so the Senate hasn't picked it up yet. Okay, so you're comfortable just monitoring this
Yeah,
for
we'll
the time being?
monitor it, yeah.
Okay. SB 280, HB 403, local ordinances. This is the business impact statement. I thought they were originally opposing this.
They did. They were opposed at first, and then when it came out, they realized that it was gonna pass regardless, and so they try to take a stance that they would support it if, and then they started having some exemptions provided, and that's when Florida League have changed. Now, talking with Keith, he goes, that's pretty rare that they change stream or stance on something, but because they were, really trying to see if they had at least a place at the table to, if it was gonna pass, let's try to carve some of it out. So I'd say they made it palatable, with some of the stuff as far as like not having to do the impact statements for state statute requirements, emergency orders, some of those things. So they really, really lessen the impact to us. They allow for, some of those ordinances for us to do the impact if we have the capabilities to do it, so we don't have to contract all of those out. So they did try to make it palatable. I mean, I still don't like it, but I think, that's where Florida League of Cities stands on it.
Would this be another one where, following Molly's suggestion earlier, that we seek an exemption for municipalities under a certain size?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking, I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
throwing that out as a question for everybody.
The size one doesn't really, for me, doesn't apply to this one specifically, because I think an ordinance is ordinance, and
Well, good, I mean, you're required to do this estimated economic impact or effect of proposed ordinances on businesses, both within and outside the community. So if we ask for an exemption for smaller municipalities,
What's the
I'm
definition
just
of outside
suggesting it.
community?
And that's the other thing, outside the municipality, I don't know exactly how that fits into the bigger picture, right, if we're trying to do an economic impact analysis.
the way, a lot of the adjustments they made were really favorable, and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, is this like, give us an example of where we would have to do this. Would it be like when all the sign ordinances were being passed? Is that an
Sign one would have been,
example?
that's the easiest example to use. The sign ordinance would have an impact. If you went and you said, we're not gonna allow, I don't think we allow them anyways, but if we didn't allow A-frame signs, for an example, you're taking that away from a business that might use it, you're gonna have to provide an impact on how that will affect their business.
How do you do that?
You get a consultant.
You have to get
Yeah,
somebody
it's
in
it's a pain in the butt.
to do the economic analysis.
Yeah, yeah, it's an unfunded mandate when we do this. I mean, there is gonna be, and I don't know, we'll take a shot at it, budget-wise, of trying to, look at those, but I think it'll make decisions on what ordinances we pass, if it's gonna, be an impact to businesses, and we see that, maybe you guys wanna see it before you even pass it anyways. I mean, so, we'll see. I'm not sure how to approach that yet.
So, I mean, from reading the summary, it appeared that if we do the economic impact, we pass the ordinance, the remedy, if a business doesn't like what has been passed, would be to take it to court
Right.
immediately. There's no administrative remedy. It's immediately
See,
to
I
the
think
court.
that just puts undue hardship on a business having to do that. You gotta go out and hire an attorney, and some people don't have the money to do that, and so, it's just not fair.
So the
I
parts
I
that
think we
they-
almost over-govern here. I
The
think.
part that they carved out was that they're, if it's frivolous, award, attorney fees. So, if somebody just says, I don't like that ordinance, and they're gonna sue us frivolously, then if we go to court and we say, look, we're in the right, that this is why we did everything by the book, then they would have to cover the attorney fees, of the
Well,
parties.
that's pretty much normal in
Up to
any lawsuit, honestly. I mean, it's, if you prevail, they
Yeah,
gotta
but that
pay
hasn't
you.
always been the case in municipalities, so sometimes we've had to eat those.
Yeah.
Well, it simply puts an obligation on us then to obviously bring in a consultant to do the economic analysis. If we're considering an ordinance like signs, that could impact those businesses, or any other ordinance that might impact a business.
I try to do some just glancing at how many ordinances we passed in the last 2.5 years since I've been here. I mean, I don't know of many that really affected businesses, but besides maybe the sign ordinances. I mean, I know we did one for the dog, the dog ordinance. I mean, that was pretty positive. I think council's always taken a stance of trying to try to give businesses more an advantage. I think it's pretty rare that we've tried to take something away. I mean, pesticide ordinance, it really doesn't really have a huge effect on businesses, but I guess we'd probably have to do an impact study to say, what is that business gonna have to pay for their landscaping, or, instead of using, a certain chemical, they have to use another one. I guess we'd have to do something like that to show that that ordinance is gonna have an effect on businesses one way or another.
A number of years ago, we did change the parking ordinance to require wider parking spaces. That would have been another example of where we would have had to do an analysis, so.
But we don't have to actually have a consultant every time. Like, if we were gonna, the dog situation, I would have probably said, no, let's not do an ordinance.
Yeah, I think in that situation, we can provide, our planning team could, do analysis, say this won't have an impact on businesses, sign it. I'm guessing that's the way it is, the way that I've read and had conversations. I mean, we'll have to confirm that when we get to that point, but I think it allows for us to use our own in-house, staff to provide that.
So what's everybody's feeling? Support it, oppose it, or just kind of accept the fact that it's probably a fait accompli and we're just gonna move past it?
Stick with the original oppose.
I'd impose it.
Lori?
I'd stick with the original oppose.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I think on this one, I'm okay supporting it, just the way that the changes have been.
All right, well, we got three in opposition.
Okay.
Molly, do you wanna?
Yeah, I think, I keep going back and forth, because I feel like they did make a lot of amendments that are favorable, and I feel like it keeps us a little accountable maybe, whereas the business one, I think that's what the intent is too, but I think it's just too big of, too many open ends on that, and too much risk, where this, I'm from what Jeremy's saying, it probably doesn't sound like there's too much we would do, so I don't know that I have a strong urge to go against Florida League of Cities and oppose it.
I think the intent is, if we're gonna have one, let's try to get this one versus the other one.
Well, I mean, I think they're kind of reading the writing on the wall, thinking this is gonna get done in one way, shape, or form, but, I mean, there's nothing that says we can't write a letter saying we, again, either oppose, or we look for an exemption for municipalities under a certain size, saying this creates an economic hardship. That's my suggestion. Lori, Grace, are you good with that?
I still oppose.
Okay. Well, we're opposed, 3-2. Okay, the next item is the Tequesta Park improvements. I talked with Jack on this, I know Jeremy has as well. The gentleman who's actually supporting this in the House is not John, not our district representative, as you all know. But as Jack said to me, the fact that he was able to get this onto the consent agenda, he said, is actually a very big deal. He said Senator Powell is ready to go in the Senate. Obviously, it has to make it through the House first. And again, whether it makes it through its entirety or not at all, or a portion of it, obviously a portion, or it's in its entirety, it would then move to the Senate, where Senator Powell will then handle it. You know, I know we talked about this before. The reason Senator Powell was so adamant that we needed to ask for the entire amount was because he said, look, in the Senate, they're going to want to know exactly the dollar amount that you guys are ultimately seeking. He said they don't want to have a situation where you come in for a part of it this year and then, oh, by the way, now we're going to ask for more the next year, more the following year. He said, come in for the whole thing. If they don't give you the whole thing or any of it, they know exactly what it is you're looking for. And when you come back the next year for the same thing or the remainder, he said they're already on notice. So that's why he felt so strongly that that was the right way to approach it. John obviously had a different perspective with the House, but they were able to get Representative Bassett to be able to support this. So we'll see what happens. I think it's up for vote tomorrow, so we'll see what happens with it. It'd be great, obviously, to get all. Can't get all, even a portion would be wonderful.
Is there any value of putting the push to have people call?
I've called and let them know how much we appreciate the fact that, you know, he took this up on our behalf and is moving it forward. I don't know if all of us calling together.
Residents, GTA?
So this falls under the natural, agricultural, and house resources falls under, Kyle, help me out.
You know, terrible names.
Rouse, was it,
I think that's what.
what's his name, Rouse?
I think that's correct.
Anyways, he's the representative, he's big in agriculture. It's his committee. Noel, when I asked when they went up there, because they met and they came down, the chamber did, and said, asked for our agenda, I asked Noel with the chamber if they had went up there and talked in favor of Tequesta Park, and he said that they did mention it up, that Powell actually asked the question about Tequesta Park. I said, oh, yeah, well, what'd you say? He said he didn't have, Noel said he didn't have a lot of information with it. And he says, but it's in, Senator or Representative Rouse's, committee now. So he reached out to his staff and they expressed their support from the chamber side, or at least from Noel's side, that it was important to the region. I don't know that this chamber has taken an official stance, but, Noel did speak in favor about how important it was. So hopefully that's a step in the right direction.
So we shall see what happens. Okay, Cyber Florida, local government infrastructure and technical assistance. This just looks like they were trying to establish a state entity, I guess.
I think they've been trying this for a little while. I'm not sure.
Okay.
The
And
good
they're
and
saying
bad of it.
they support it. I don't see any reason not to. Anybody else have any strong feelings on this one?
No.
Residential home protection tree trimming. So this amends a current state preemption against local government tree removal permits for the removal of dangerous trees on residential property. So this is, I guess, would be a change in favor of a home rule type approach.
I'm fine with it. I just hope there's language that, can anyone just cut down a tree and be like, oh, it was
Yeah, I like to know
risk.
who
Like,
labels
I
it as
just-
dangerous, like what
Yeah,
constitutes
I
dangerous.
just don't know the details and how, like, does the village need to just come look at it first and agree, like, yes, it's dangerous, you can cut it down without having to go through permitting and whatnot? Or,
Well, it says exempts, the way I read this was it exempts the local government from the current state preemption, which means that then it comes back to us to determine what kind of ordinance we want to put in place to address this issue with our residents. Jeremy, is that the way?
I'm not 100% sure on this one. I haven't.
The only question that kind of popped up when I read through this was, I I know in our code, like, properties have to have X amount of trees. Just where is the checks and balances of making sure everyone kind of at least has a tree and not just an open property? I mean, if they don't have to go through, I'm not saying the government needs to tell them what to do on their property, but just where is the checks and balance overall, for our end at least?
Well, it does say this bill provides definitions of documentation and residential property to clarify what constitutes a residential property and to establish the level of assessment and type of documentation that must be provided by an arborist or a landscape architect. So it allows us to establish an ordinance, but there is still some guidance from the state as to what that ordinance has to include. I mean, I guess I would look at dangerous, Doug, I don't know if you want to comment on this, but a dangerous tree to me would be something that's going to interfere with a power line, has a danger of falling over onto a roadway or a sidewalk and
I mean,
injuring people, or.
Some people claim coconut trees are dangerous. Are we gonna tell people if they have to take down their coconut tree?
Our department, we don't get involved in the private property, that's what enforcement, we deal with the right of way. But if you got anything dangerous to the utility lines or tree that's grown so big, the house is in danger of a hurricane, invasive tree.
So I guess my question really comes back to our end. So let's say this passed and somebody gets an arborist and they get to tear down a tree, which, okay, if the tree is dangerous or sick or whatever, take it down, but where is the check and balance point of where is a new tree gonna be placing that tree?
So I think, I'm gonna have to do some research. I think we've already passed an ordinance that does this, and I think it matches the state, but I think, and this is just me speaking, I think the state is putting in the dangerous part of it that wasn't part of the original one. Like if your house comes in, an arborist says that your tree is dead, and he makes that determination, but now I think they're adding to this and saying, not only is it dead, you have an arborist come out there, tell building that you can remove the tree, no permits required, but everything's copacetic. This one, I think, adds the dangerous part to it, so it's adding a definition, the way that I read
Who
it.
determines whether it's dangerous or not?
The arborist has to do that.
So you
And
got one guy making the decision on whether or not it's dangerous or not.
Right, and so I think I read an article not too long ago about a concern about, a lot of trees are being tore down, and is it justified? I mean,
That's
you got an
kinda what I'm
arborist or a
asking.
landscape architect that have a certification or a professional, I guess, stamp behind their name, you kinda gotta take their word for it. I mean, I know, just using Jose, for example, I mean, he's licensed everything, but if you got a landscape architect saying this tree is dangerous or it's dead, how do you argue with that? And, there's no real process for that. I don't think that one's a very tough one. You're gonna, tell an engineer, and I'm just using a road example, tell an engineer that that's not right. I mean, he's got a stamp behind his name. He's doing it, an ethical version of that. How do you argue with that?
So a resident would have to seek this to be done. They aren't just gonna run around looking for dangerous trees?
No. A resident would have to go, hey, this tree's dangerous, I'm gonna go get you, and they would say, how do I tear it down? Building, or somebody would say, you need to go get an arborist to get it certified, and then I think this provides for that documentation, but I'll have to do a little more research on it, that's me guessing, and so don't quote me on any of that.
So the Florida League is supporting this. Theoretically, again, preempting state law or changing state law is really a better way of describing it. So any thought as far as whether you want to join in their support? No opposition to this? We good?
I don't know, I'm kind of
Okay.
just wanting to know more about it.
And then the next one, HB 105, SB 224, this is a regulation of smoking in public parks. So this is giving authority, or municipalities, more authority to be able to address smoking in public places, beaches or public parks that they own. And that's the key thing, that they own. So we would be able to restrict smoking as we deem appropriate in those public spaces.
So
And
for the
there's-
village, it'd be our parks, but not the beach, because the beach is county.
Correct, the beach is county. And the private beaches obviously are beyond our control. So of course, again, this is an enhancement of local authority, they're supporting it. I would agree. Okay, so we're all in support of that. And the last one is a supermajority vote for legislative preemption. And this is a requirement of 2/3 of vote of each house to approve any general law preempting a field of local government regulation to the state. So again, this is, the way I read this was a strengthening of the home rule provision.
I agree.
Which I'm assuming we all.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So, that's it?
So I think the only other thing I want to bring up is, there's bills on their agenda that are different than what we went through. I don't have, the support or oppose, I kind of align with all of them, but the one that, and Robert Shaw had brought to attention is the one with the seagrass mitigation. And Jeremy, I saw you send something over before the meeting, I haven't had time to read it. I guess I just want to understand what this impact is, what docks will be exempt, because, I mean, I know, I think it's with DP, like, you have to do, a seagrass study before you can even get approved to build over the water. So I kind of want to understand this better, and if it's a real problem, or what it
So I
exactly
read the
means.
bill, the proposed bill today, and the way that, we don't have any say over those docks. So typically, if somebody wants to build a dock, they go to FDP, they meet all the guidelines, they come provide that permit to us. We make sure the dock meets building code and the ordinances we have, but it doesn't cover all the stuff in the water with all that, so they get that. That's the process that we go through. Now, what I think they're trying to do is, in the way that I read it, and I could be wrong, is talking about if there's a health and safety that is needed for this dock or for the work to be done. That's what I think they're trying to get through, is some special exceptions to allow for. I don't think it's just like a developer wants to build a dock, they can meet
Well, no,
this.
of
I think
course not.
there has to be some kind of health benefit to the community in order to go through that process. That's the way that I read it, and I can send you the bill, you can read through it. I mean, I think,
Well, I think you did right before the meeting, like I said, I just obviously didn't have time to read it. Yeah, I just want to understand it more, and if it's more, like you said, DEP and Army Corps, that's who you get permits for the water, so does this even apply locally?
well,
I mean,
it
it would
would
impact us locally,
yeah.
but do we even have a say in it?
I mean, our only say is that we can tell them we don't want them to be able to approve that process. They're the ones that oversee that process, so all we're doing is having input into their approval process, which is still impactful. I mean, I think that's what Mr. Shaw is trying to get across, is that we should be opposing it, and Jupiter should be opposing it, because it does have an impact on us if they loosen their requirement to some extent, whether it's just minor adjustment, it's still loosening their requirement, and so we should be opposing that.
But I haven't seen this bill, but in loosening the requirement, are they saying that, again, it isn't the local entity, it's still, can they pass a state law that impacts the environmental standards that are set by the Army Corps and FDEP?
Well, I think that's what they're trying to do. I think they're trying to amend their rules for that. So they have a process now, but what they're trying to say is, here's another carve-out that allows us to approve those permits that
okay.
get done.
Okay.
And I mean, you can read through the little carve-out, but I think it was a health, safety, or meet some kind of guideline, then they can approve that one too, that process. And
Because I know when they were building, when the Seaglass has the property across the street, and they
They want
originally were
dock.
talking about putting in basically a marina, more or less, and then they culled that back, and now they put it on hold. But I know part of the issue there was they were gonna have to mitigate, not only the seagrass, but I think there were a couple other requirements as well that they were gonna have to meet, but they wanted to put the dock, they wanted to redo the dock. I think there's a dock there that's falling apart.
But yeah, that process doesn't go through us at all.
The majority of the sea glass is being destroyed by all the people parking over there and walking all through. Right?
Yeah, I guess I'll read what you sent, I just want to understand the exemption, because, like talking about optics earlier with the car charging stations, where it's great in theory, but if it's really not having an impact because they're not being used.
Yeah.
Like, the seagrass is a huge issue, I mean, we had the worst manatee, I think, deaths on record last year because of the lack of seagrass for them to eat. So, I mean, that is a really big issue. So, but yeah, let me read what you sent. And,
Okay.
I mean,
And maybe
I'm
you
sure
can-
no one else had
Maybe
time to
you
read
can
it.
educate me, maybe I'm off base, so I read it once, I
No,
probably need,
I didn't
I
get a
probably
chance
need
to
to
read
read it in the mornings before my brain's fried, but.
Well, we all have it now, so I think we can all look at it and then.
Okay. All right. Anything else this evening? By
Good.
anyone? Bruce, Lori? Kyle?
I have one, oh, sorry.
No,
Who's next?
I'm curious why you're still here.
I was gonna say, wow, Doug, you made it to the
He's a
end.
loyal employee.
I thought the way that, was it the tower company that came in and jumped all over that was impressive, so I know it's an unfortunate situation.
Saturday.
Yeah.
And would you believe at the end of the day too, they ripped the last American flag
Yeah.
they can get their hands on out of the warehouse. They don't have any more flags.
Yeah,
Do you know even just how that even happened?
wear and tear.
It was really
Rope just
windy
broke?
this weekend, yeah.
I think it was the winds.
The heavy winds.
Heavy winds.
Big
yeah.
flag.
So
Well-
Bruce, you want to talk about me working all the time? That guy works more than I do, so.
Was that you?
Or at least every time I ask him a question, he's available. So he works at least equally, but probably more, so.
Okay. Molly, you said you had,
Yeah, just for consideration, I wanted to know if, at the next workshop, we'd want to consider reviewing the ARPA funds and what we're spending it on, because the final ruling gave more flexibility to what you can spend, so we might look at things differently. But also, and Jeremy, maybe you can explain it better than me, there's this language about not being able to reduce, taxes if you use revenue for certain things, and I just want to be careful that we don't put in our position where, say, we do become in a fortunate place where we decide we can, like, roll back the millage rate a little bit or lower it, but we can't because of this ruling. So I just feel like we should all be aware of that and make sure we understand it and that we're making the right choices with the money.
do you want to do that at the next workshop, or do you want to do a quarterly review of the whole strategic plan update? And maybe we do it, not the next one with the pending opening of the recreation center and everything else we're going to have, but maybe defer it for one more month.
I personally think it's important to look at it now.
Okay.
Because we're spending it now, we're committing the cost now, and especially if there's this language with
Right.
not being able to reduce taxes. Can you elaborate on that, Jeremy? Did I get that right?
Yeah, so the way that it reads is that states and territories may not use funding to directly or indirectly offset a reduction in net tax revenue resulting from a change in law, regulation, or administrative interpretation through the last day of the fiscal year in which funds provided have been spent. If a state or territory cuts taxes during this period, it must demonstrate how it paid for the tax cuts from sources other than these funds, such as enacting policies to raise other sources of revenue by cut spending or through higher revenue due to economic growth. If the funds provided have not been offset tax cuts, then the amount used for this purpose must be repaid to the Treasury. So basically, the cliff notes of it is if you're gonna use this money in your general fund, because that's typically how we're doing it, is we're gonna be offsetting our revenue and covering the cost of our general services, then if we do that, then we have to, it's pretty, we have to play with the language and make sure that we're correct, but we won't be able to lower taxes. Even though rollback rate is considered lowering taxes, because you're going from, 6.629, you might be lowering it down to 6.5. And so with that, it handcuffs you a little bit if you're doing that. But, the alternative is that, you don't get the funds at all. And we do have some needs, so,
The
we can
reason-
have the conversation at a future workshop, and we can go over the uses again and, talk about that process if you want.
The reason I asked about the timing is because we won't be looking at the tax issues obviously until the next budget cycle, so we have time. I don't know what we already have teed up for next month's workshop and next month's agenda. That's why I was wondering if we want to take it right now or do a full quarter, because we talked about having quarterly updates on the strategic plan. And do we want to include that as part of a quarterly update
So the next strategic plan, we'll probably need to do an update of it now, since we're about ready to go into budget cycle. The idea was every March, if there's new priorities or new strategic things you guys want to look at, we'll update it. We'll take a couple of the items off that we've addressed, And while we say an update, I mean, it'll be a true update to the strategic plan, so we, as staff, can work toward the next budget cycle of providing those initiatives.
So were you thinking of that for basically March, I don't know what the next workshop date is, let's say March 1st? Or were you thinking of that for April 1st?
So the strategic plan, I'd probably like to do like a special workshop for it, because it does take up, it should be all encompassing on that, and so, somewhere in March.
So do you want to incorporate this into that workshop, Molly?
Yeah, I don't think we should wait. I'm only 1 of 4, but I don't think it should go past March,
Disagree.
because we are spending
Okay.
and making decisions that impact us now, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's work on it. We'll try to get something in February for that particular item, and go from there.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
Get Bruce an extra meeting in before we go on.
Welcome.
Do I have a motion to
All
adjourn?
I'll make a motion. to
Second.
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
We're getting banging, yeah.